You are not controlled by others. You are controlled by the judgments you accept without questioning them. Every day you feel it when a comment changes your mood, when approval lifts you, when criticism weakens you, when silence from others makes you uneasy, and you call this normal life while your mind quietly obeys what it should only observe. If you are ready to stop letting external voices govern your inner world, stay here and think with discipline for a while. If you want to keep building a community around Stoic practice, subscribe and stay close, not for entertainment, but for training in how to return your mind to itself. What follows is not comfort. It is a direct examination of how control is taken from you in ordinary moments, and how reason can be restored as the only authority over your responses, your attention, and your choices. Number 1. Recognize what truly belongs to you. Listen carefully, because this is the place where most people live and never notice that they are living in chains. They wake, they move, they work, they speak, they defend themselves, they chase approval, they fear rejection, they resent delay, they rage at insult, and all the while they call themselves free. But a man is not free because he can move his body from one room to another. He is not free because he can post a thought, win an argument, earn money, or make another person smile. A man is free only when he knows what belongs to him and what does not. Until he learns that, he will hand his soul over to every passerby who knows how to flatter him, provoke him, confuse him, or frighten him. He will be pulled by words, by moods, by opinions, by glances, by silence, by delays, by praise, by criticism. He will live as though his mind were public property. And that is no life worthy of a rational being. What belongs to you is far smaller than your pride tells you, and far greater than your fear allows you to believe. Your judgments belong to you. Your choices belong to you. Your consent belongs to you. Your desire, your aversion, your purpose, your use of what appears before you, these belong to you. The judgments others form about you do not belong to you. Their anger does not belong to you. Their desire to control you does not belong to you. Their praise does not belong to you. Their contempt does not belong to you. Their behavior is not yours. Their opinions are not yours. Their promises are not yours. Their betrayal is not yours. Their misunderstanding is not yours. Their forgetting is not yours. Yet people spend their lives trying to govern these things as though they were household possessions. They reach for what was never theirs and then suffer because they cannot keep it. That is the first slavery, mistaking the external for the own. If you do not know where your power begins and ends, every insult will enter you like a spear. Every compliment will intoxicate you. Every delay will anger you. Every loss will seem like the end of your life. Every demand will feel like a command. You will become dependent on the moods of others for the stability of your own mind. You will not need a jailer. You will carry your prison with you. You will open the door for your own captivity every morning by living as though peace were something another person could grant you or withhold from you. But no one can hand you peace. No one can place virtue into your soul except you. No one can make you just, or disciplined, or courageous, or wise, and no one can force you to surrender those things unless you give them away. This is why the first task is not to conquer the world. It is to divide the world correctly. The outer world is full of things that move without asking your permission. Bodies age, people change, fortune rises and falls, love can be returned, ignored, distorted, or lost. Reputations are built, then torn down. Work is praised, then overlooked. Plans are made, then broken by events. The weather changes, the market changes, the mind of a friend changes, the mood of a stranger changes, the body weakens, the future remains hidden. None of this belongs to you. All of it can be taken from you, or denied to you, or delayed from you. Therefore it must never be placed in the center of your peace. Place there only what cannot be taken, the proper use of your mind, the uprightness of your choice, the discipline of your soul. Most people never understand this because they live by impression instead of examination. Something appears to them and they obey it at once. Someone speaks sharply and they flare up. Someone withdraws affection and they panic. Someone offers approval and they bend. Someone criticizes and they collapse. Something is inconvenient and they call it unbearable. Something is uncertain and they call it dangerous. Something is delayed and they call it injustice. But an impression is only a report. It is not yet truth. It is a message that must be tested. Every time you hear the mind say, "I have been wronged," pause and ask whether you have truly been wronged in the only sense that matters. Has your character been forced into corruption? Every time you hear the mind say, "I need them to understand me," ask whether understanding by others is more important than understanding by reason. Every time you hear the mind say, "I cannot stand this," ask whether you are speaking of pain in the body or weakness in the soul. These are not the same. The body may suffer. The soul need not obey suffering with panic. A man who knows what belongs to him stops begging the world to validate his existence. He no longer waits for other people to tell him that he is good, because he understands that goodness is not a vote. He no longer spends his days constructing a face for the crowd, because he knows that a face is not a character. He no longer shapes his choices around the applause of people who do not know what virtue is. He no longer sells his inner freedom for inclusion. This is not arrogance. This is sanity. The man who needs constant approval is not humble. He is untrained. He has handed his steering to anyone who notices him. He has made himself governable by every opinion that lands near him. Today he is elevated by praise, tomorrow crushed by silence. Today he is bold in a supportive room, tomorrow timid in a critical one. Such a man does not possess himself. You must understand this clearly. Being controlled by others rarely happens through chains. It happens through consent. Someone wants you to hurry, and you hurry. Someone wants you to explain yourself beyond what is necessary, and you explain. Someone wants you angry, and you become angry. Someone wants you ashamed, and you carry their shame into your own house as though it were a guest worthy of honor. Someone wants you to fear their loss of affection, and you begin to live as a servant. The instrument of control is not always force. Often it is your own surrender to the false belief that your well-being depends on something outside your command. Once that belief takes root, others do not need to command you directly. You will command yourself into bondage. So begin where freedom begins, with the judgment of appearances. A harsh word appears. Is it an injury or merely a sound? A careless act appears. Is it an attack on your virtue or simply another person acting according to their own confusion? A loss appears. Is it the destruction of your character or only the removal of what fortune had placed in your hands for a time? A demand appears. Is it a rightful call to duty or a temptation to abandon your own principles? You must not be the man who swallows every impression whole. You must become the examiner of impressions. Nothing enters the soul untested. Nothing is admitted because it is loud. Nothing is admitted because it is repeated. Nothing is admitted because it is feared. The person who can never be controlled by others is not the person who never feels pressure. He is the person who knows how to respond to pressure without becoming a different man. Pressure reveals what is ruled by reason and what is ruled by appetite. If you are desperate to be liked, pressure will expose you. If you are addicted to comfort, pressure will expose you. If you cling to reputation, pressure will expose you. If you fear looking foolish, pressure will expose you. If you live to avoid discomfort, pressure will expose you. But if you have trained yourself to care only for what is upright, then pressure becomes a test, not a master. The crowd may pull, but it cannot move your principle. The voice may threaten, but it cannot rewrite your judgment. The loss may sting, but it cannot force you to act shamefully. The insult may burn, but it cannot oblige you to betray your own reason. This training begins in the morning, before the world has fully entered your mind. When you wake, do not rush to the first demand. Do not let the day seize you before you have seized yourself. Sit still for a moment and remind yourself of the division that governs all life. Some things are up to you and some are not. Your will is up to you. Your conduct is up to you. Your response is up to you. The bodies, opinions, outcomes, and moods of others are not. Tell yourself this not as a slogan, but as a drill. Say it until the soul recognizes it as fact. Then ask, what situation today is most likely to tempt me to surrender my freedom? Is it a conversation with a difficult person? Is it a meeting where I want to appear impressive? Is it a family member whose opinion still owns too much of me? Is it a moment of rejection, delay, temptation, or fatigue? Name the test before it arrives. A man unprepared is already half defeated. Then decide in advance what virtue requires. Do not wait until the moment of pressure to invent a conscience. The untrained soul improvises under stress and usually chooses the easiest escape. The trained soul has already chosen. If someone insults you, your duty is not to win the room. Your duty is to keep your reason intact. If someone disrespects you, your duty is not to show them that you are powerful. Your duty is to remain just. If someone misunderstands you, your duty is not to seize every opportunity to defend your image. Your duty is to speak truthfully and leave the rest. If someone withholds approval, your duty is not to chase them. Your duty is to continue what is right. If someone tries to rush your judgment, your duty is to slow down. If someone tempts you to act beneath yourself, your duty is to refuse. These are small acts in appearance, but they decide the shape of a life. You will be tested most where your vanity is strongest. If you secretly crave being seen as wise, you will be controlled by those who can praise or question your intelligence. If you secretly crave being seen as kind, you will be controlled by those who can accuse you of harshness. If you secretly crave being seen as strong, you will be controlled by those who can challenge your image of strength. The crowd does not need to know your weakness. It is enough that you know it and have not yet corrected it. So turn inward without excuse. Ask not, how do I make them see me better? Ask, what part of me is still governed by their perception? There is the wound. There is the place where you can be moved like a door on weak hinges. Fix that place. Strength is not the absence of a soft spot. Strength is the correction of it. To recognize what truly belongs to you, you must also accept the scandalous truth that many things you call mine are merely things entrusted to you for a time. Your body is not entirely yours in the way your judgment is yours. It is subject to sickness, fatigue, injury, and age. Your possessions are loaned by fortune. Your status can disappear. Your relationships can change. Even your current circumstances are temporary. To cling to them as if they were permanent ownership is to invite grief before loss has even arrived. This is why the wise person uses what is given without pretending to possess it absolutely. He cares for his body, but does not idolize it. He values friendship, but does not enslave himself to another's mood. He works diligently, but does not anchor his worth to outcome. He accepts the use of externals as one accepts a tool, with gratitude, with skill, and with readiness to return it when the time comes. This is not coldness, this is clarity. The man who understands possession correctly loves more cleanly because he loves without demanding that fortune obey his feelings. He does not ask people to become immortal to satisfy his attachment. He does not demand that circumstances never change to protect his comfort. He knows that all things in the realm of appearance are passing through. Therefore, he is not broken when they pass. He is not shocked when the world behaves like the world. He is prepared, and preparation is a form of peace. You must also learn that control and influence are not the same. Another person may have power over your circumstances, but they need not have power over your inner choice. A superior can assign your work, but cannot compel your character unless you agree to become servile. A critic can wound your pride, but cannot force you to become dishonest unless you choose to defend your image instead of your truth. A beloved person can disappoint you, but cannot force you to abandon your principles unless you decide their approval matters more than your integrity. Many surrender because they confuse external pressure with inner necessity. They say, "I had no choice." That is often a lie dressed as weakness. There is always a choice, though not always a pleasant one. You may choose discomfort, restraint, silence, honesty, patience, or endurance. You may choose to bear the cost of virtue. That cost is never cheap, but slavery is more expensive. When a person tries to control you, what exactly are they trying to touch? Usually one of three things: your fear, your desire, or your self-image. They threaten to withdraw something you fear losing. They promise something you desire, or they strike at the image you are desperate to protect. Your defense is the same in each case. Reduce the value of externals to their proper place. Fear loses power when you remember that no external loss is as bad as internal corruption. Desire loses power when you remember that craving is a form of dependence. Self-image loses power when you remember that the only image worth preserving is the image of a disciplined soul. A man who is truly free does not ask, "How do I avoid looking weak?" He asks, "What action preserves my reason?" That question cuts through vanity, and vanity is one of the main doors through which other people enter your soul. There will be times when silence is your strongest answer. There will be times when you must speak, but not to defend your pride. There will be times when you must retreat from the scene, not because you are afraid, but because you refuse to give another person access to your judgment through provocation. Many people think they are standing their ground when they are actually being dragged into the mud. Do not confuse reaction with strength. A man who reacts instantly is often not powerful but available. He has left the gates open. He has made his soul easy to enter. You must train the pause. Between impression and response, there must be a space where reason can speak. In that space, ask, "Is this within my control? What response is worthy of me? What would I do if no one were watching? What would I choose if praise and punishment were both removed?" These questions strip away the theater and bring you back to substance. Practice this pause in ordinary matters because the soul learns by repetition. When someone interrupts you, do not immediately retaliate. When a message comes that unsettles you, do not immediately answer in the heat of feeling. When a plan changes, do not immediately complain. When someone speaks offensively, do not immediately make their offense your command. The first movement of the untutored mind is not sacred. It is often false, impulsive, and childish. The trained mind is not one that has no first movement. It is one that does not obey the first movement blindly. The first movement may notice, reason must decide. That is the difference between an impression and a judgment, and that difference is the space where freedom lives. You may ask, how do I stop others from controlling me if I must still live among them? The answer is simple and severe. Stop giving them the keys. They may knock, they may plead, they may threaten, they may flatter, they may misunderstand. But unless you surrender your judgment, they have only as much power as your own fear supplies them. Therefore, do not ask how to prevent every attempt at control. Ask how to become immune to control in the places that matter. A man cannot prevent wind from blowing, but he can build his house properly. Likewise, you cannot prevent every social force from pressing on you, but you can build an inner architecture that does not collapse under pressure. Build it now, while the weather is calm, not after the storm has already entered. A crucial part of this work is learning to endure without complaint. Complaint is a subtle form of surrender. It says, "This should not be difficult. This should not be uncomfortable. This should not cost me anything." But life is not obligated to be easy for your convenience. Difficulty is not an insult. It is training. Every delay asks whether you can wait without becoming bitter. Every embarrassment asks whether you can remain composed without collapsing. Every unwanted duty asks whether you can obey reason without needing applause. Every bodily discomfort asks whether your soul is smaller than your sensations. The man who complains at every inconvenience is already controlled by inconvenience. The man who endures without whimpering begins to own himself. There is also the practice of voluntary discomfort, and it is not a game. It is a reminder to the soul that it can live without luxury and still remain upright. Go without some comfort on purpose. Choose simplicity for a time. Accept a mild inconvenience before fate imposes a severe one. Drink plain water without longing for excess. Eat with restraint. Dress without vanity. Walk when you could be idle. Sit with silence when you could escape into noise. Do not do this to prove anything to others. Do it to train the inner ruler to obey principle rather than appetite. If you cannot bear to be a little uncomfortable by choice, you will be mastered when discomfort arrives uninvited. But if you teach yourself, "I can endure this, it is not the worst thing, I remain mine even here," then you take away one of the main levers by which the world controls men. Another practice is the evening examination. At the end of the day, withdraw from the noise and ask yourself what ruled you. Where did you hand over your freedom? Where did you seek approval instead of truth? Where did you react instead of choose? Where did you let a passing impression become a command? Where were you just? Where were you restrained? Where were you cowardly? Where were you lazy? Where were you proud? Do not do this as a performance of guilt. Do it as a physician examines a wound. If you find fault, do not despair. If you find progress, do not become vain. The point is not to accuse yourself forever. The point is to see clearly, because what is hidden cannot be healed. A man who refuses to examine himself will be controlled by the same weakness his whole life and call it fate. Do not live that way. Be severe in review and merciful in correction. You must also separate your duty from your preference. Many people are controlled because they only act when they feel like acting. They imagine that a duty which does not feel pleasant is optional. It is not. If something is just, do it because it is just. If something is honest, do it because it is honest. If something is necessary, do it because reason recognizes necessity. Your feelings may accompany virtue or resist it, but they are not the law. If you wait until desire agrees with duty, you will remain a slave to mood. The freedom of the soul begins when reason commands and appetite obeys. This is not suppression, it is order. A city without order collapses. A soul without order is a mob. Do not be deceived by the flattering lie that freedom means doing whatever you feel. That is not freedom. That is captivity to appetite. A man ruled by impulse is not free because he can choose anything. He is unfree because he cannot choose himself. He follows whatever appears pleasurable, easy, or socially rewarding. He says yes to the crowd, yes to comfort, yes to vanity, yes to fear, yes to resentment, yes to desire, and then calls the resulting chaos his personality. But personality without discipline is just disordered appetite wearing a mask. Real freedom is the ability to say no to what is beneath you and yes to what is worthy, even when the body resists and the crowd disapproves. This is why you must guard your attention. Attention is the doorway of the soul. Whatever you stare at long enough begins to shape you. If you dwell on insults, you become easily insulted. If you dwell on envy, you become hungry for comparison. If you dwell on the behavior of others, you become neglectful of your own character. If you dwell on fantasies of reward, you become weak before reality. Move your attention back to the task of the moment. What is before me now? What is required now? What judgment is necessary now? What action is within my power now? Do not let the mind wander into the furniture of regret and anticipation. Regret weakens, anticipation corrupts, present duty strengthens. The present moment is where the soul proves itself. Everything else is smoke if you use it to avoid the work in front of you. There is a particular danger in relationships because people often confuse affection with ownership and care with control. They think that because someone loves them, that person should be allowed to manage their mind, their choices, their time, their speech, their emotions. But love worthy of a rational being does not seek to rule another's inner life. And even if another person attempts to do so, you must not surrender what belongs to you. Be respectful, be just, be sincere, but do not become governable through sentiment. No relationship is healthy if it requires you to abandon reason to preserve peace. Peace bought by self-betrayal is not peace. It is delayed resentment. The same is true of family, friendship, and work. You may owe people kindness, fairness, and diligence. You do not owe them your soul. When you are tempted to obey others against your own judgment, ask what is actually at stake. Often it is nothing essential. It is merely the discomfort of being disliked, the awkwardness of disagreement, the fear of being called difficult, the craving to be included, or the desire to avoid a tense moment. These are weak reasons to surrender a strong self. Better to bear temporary awkwardness than permanent corruption. Better to be misunderstood than dishonest. Better to be disliked for virtue than loved for weakness. Better to stand alone with reason than crowded with error. This is not pride speaking. It is a clear ranking of goods. Virtue is first. Everything else is secondary. Until that order is fixed in you, others will always be able to bargain with your conscience. A controlled person is often predictable because his weaknesses are visible to those around him. He cannot resist flattery. He cannot bear silence. He cannot bear to look wrong. He cannot tolerate being excluded. He cannot say no to comfort. He cannot wait. He cannot endure a hard truth without becoming defensive. Such a person is easy to manipulate because his motives are known: fear, vanity, appetite, approval. But the person who cares first for virtue becomes difficult to steer because he no longer offers his core self to the first hand that reaches for it. He may still be persuaded by reason, corrected by truth, and guided by duty. That is not control. That is cooperation with wisdom. But he cannot be bought by applause, bullied by hostility, or seduced by ease. This is the kind of hardness you should seek. Not bitterness, not coldness, but inner firmness. Remember, too, that resentment is one of the chains people choose most readily. They replay the offense, nurse the wound, and rehearse revenge in imagination. But resentment does nothing to free you. It merely keeps the offender inside your mind, where they continue to occupy your attention without paying rent. Why should you allow this? If another person has acted badly, then they have already harmed their own soul more than yours. They have revealed confusion, lack of training, or weakness. Your task is not to become equally disordered in response. Your task is to remain aligned with your own good. That is the superior victory. You defeat control not by becoming obsessed with the controller, but by refusing to let their action determine your character. There is a severe comfort in accepting what cannot be changed. Some people resist this because they mistake acceptance for passivity. It is not passive to see reality as it is. It is passive only to complain while doing nothing useful. Acceptance means you stop arguing with the structure of existence. You stop insisting that people be different before you can be calm. You stop demanding that events obey your preferences before you can act wisely. You see what is before you, and then you choose the right response. If a matter is within your power, you act. If it is not, you release it. That release is not weakness, it is discipline. Many suffer because they spend their energy resisting the unchangeable and then have none left for what can actually be done. Do not waste your strength on rebellion against reality. Save it for your own conduct. Now consider how often you are controlled by imagined audiences. Even when no one is present, you rehearse a performance. You picture how you will appear, how you will be judged, how you will be talked about, how you will be remembered. Then you make decisions according to that imagined audience. This is a hidden tyranny. You are no longer obeying reason, you are obeying a crowd in your head. Break that habit. Ask whether the action before you is noble, useful, just, and in accord with your role. If it is, do it whether anyone praises you or not. If it is not, do not do it even if everyone applauds. This frees you from the invisible court that sits in your imagination and passes sentence on every move you make. A man governed by that court is never at rest. A man governed by reason can be quiet even in solitude. Do not underestimate the power of small refusals. Every time you refuse a petty temptation, you strengthen the soul. Every time you refuse to answer a provocation, you strengthen the soul. Every time you refuse to over-explain yourself, you strengthen the soul. Every time you refuse to seek a reward for doing right, you strengthen the soul. Every time you refuse to make comfort your master, you strengthen the soul. The soul is not made firm by grand declarations. It is made firm by repeated acts of self-command. And self-command is not glamorous. It is often invisible, but it is the root of all genuine power. The world will continue to offer you opportunities to be controlled. Some will come in the form of desire, some in the form of fear, some in the form of admiration, some in the form of rejection, some in the form of urgent demands, some in the form of tenderness, some in the form of ridicule, some in the form of your own memory. Yet none of these can rule a soul that knows itself. The soul that knows what belongs to it does not panic at every knock. It answers from a stable center. It says, "This opinion is not mine. This emotion is not yet my command. This event is not my possession. This body is not my God. This duty is before me. This judgment is mine to examine. This choice is mine to make." That is the voice of inner freedom. That is the sound of a man no longer easily owned. And do not imagine that this work is for saints and not for ordinary men. It is precisely for ordinary men, because ordinary life is where control is tested. In the office, in the home, in traffic, in a message thread, in a quiet disappointment, in a desire to be chosen, in a moment of embarrassment, in the face of unfairness, in the fatigue that lowers your guard. This is where your philosophy proves itself, not in speeches, but in conduct, not in admiration, but in discipline, not in theory, but in the living hour. So take the first lesson seriously and do not delay. Recognize what belongs to you. Your judgments belong to you. Your choices belong to you. Your character belongs to you. Your consent belongs to you. Everything else is borrowed, temporary, and outside your final command. Stop placing your peace in the hands of people who do not know how to keep it. Stop asking the world to be gentle before you choose virtue. Stop begging circumstances to arrange themselves around your preferences. Stop allowing other people to reach into your soul through your fear of their opinion. Fortify the inner ruler. Test every impression. Train the pause. Practice saying no to what weakens you. Practice accepting what you cannot change. Practice choosing what is upright without waiting for reward. Examine yourself each evening and correct yourself without pity and without pride. Return in the morning with the same resolve. Do this long enough, and you will discover that control loses its grip when the soul stops offering itself up. This is how a man becomes difficult to enslave. not by hardening into arrogance, not by hiding from life, not by pretending that pain does not exist. He becomes difficult to enslave by knowing the boundaries of his own nature and defending them with reason. He becomes free by no longer confusing the things of fortune with the things of the soul. He becomes stable by taking full responsibility for what is his and releasing what is not. He becomes unshakable by making virtue the only treasure that cannot be taken. This is not a trick. It is a way of life. And once you truly see it, you will never again be able to pretend that your freedom lives in anyone else's hands. Number 2. Refuse external approval and validation. There is a quiet habit that governs more lives than anger, fear, or greed. It rarely announces itself. It does not arrive with violence or demand attention. Instead, it whispers before nearly every decision you make. It asks one question again and again: what will they think of me? If you have not learned to answer that question with reason instead of anxiety, then your life is no longer directed by your own judgment. It is directed by an audience that never stops changing. You become careful where you should be courageous, silent where you should be truthful, agreeable where you should be firm, and restless where you should be at peace. The greatest loss is not that others influence your actions. The greatest loss is that you slowly forget how to examine your own mind without asking permission from theirs. Look honestly at how often your thoughts begin with another person's imagined opinion. Before speaking, you measure whether your words will be accepted. Before making a difficult choice, you wonder whether someone will approve. After completing honest work, you wait to see if anyone notices. Even when no one is present, your mind invents spectators. You rehearse conversations that have not happened. You defend yourself against accusations that have not been made. You seek applause that may never come. In doing so, you abandon the only judge capable of leading you toward a good life: your own disciplined reason. The craving for approval does not begin as a dramatic weakness. It often disguises itself as kindness, professionalism, humility, or responsibility. You tell yourself that you simply want harmony, that you wish to avoid conflict, that you care about maintaining good relationships. Yet beneath these explanations there is often an unexamined fear. You fear disapproval more than you value integrity. You fear being misunderstood more than you desire to remain truthful. You fear temporary discomfort more than lasting self-respect. This fear quietly rearranges your character. It persuades you to betray your own judgment in small ways until one day you discover that you no longer know which choices are truly yours. A disciplined life begins by refusing to make public opinion the measure of private conduct. The opinions of others belong to them. Their praise reflects their own standards. Their criticism reflects their own understanding. Neither possesses authority over your character unless you choose to grant it authority. If another person celebrates your actions without understanding your motives, their praise cannot make you virtuous. If another person condemns you while you have acted with justice and honesty, their criticism cannot make you corrupt. The condition of your soul is not determined by the voices surrounding you. It is determined by the judgments you willingly accept. Notice how quickly the mind seeks confirmation after every action. You finish a task and immediately search for recognition. You offer help and secretly hope someone acknowledges your generosity. You speak honestly and wait for appreciation instead of accepting that truth has already fulfilled its purpose. This habit weakens the soul because it teaches you that your actions remain incomplete until someone else approves them. Yet an upright action reaches completion the moment it is performed according to reason. Nothing external is required to complete what virtue has already finished. Many people imagine they are pursuing excellence when they are actually pursuing admiration. These are not the same path. Excellence depends upon disciplined effort, honest judgment, and consistent character. Admiration depends upon changing preferences that belong to other minds. One path remains available every day regardless of circumstances. The other disappears whenever the crowd changes direction. If your peace depends upon admiration, your peace will always remain uncertain because the opinions of others possess no stability. Today they praise restraint. Tomorrow they reward excess. Today they celebrate honesty. Tomorrow they applaud convenience. If you build your identity upon their approval, you build upon shifting ground. Train yourself to ask a different question before every important decision. Do not ask whether this choice will make you popular. Ask whether it improves your character. Do not ask whether others will understand. Ask whether your judgment remains faithful to reason. Do not ask whether this action increases your reputation. Ask whether it strengthens your discipline. These questions direct your attention toward what genuinely belongs to you. They restore authority to the part of yourself that no crowd can govern unless invited. There will be moments when refusing approval feels like losing something valuable. You may disappoint people whose expectations have quietly controlled your choices. You may discover that some relationships were built upon compliance rather than mutual respect. You may notice uncomfortable silence after declining to satisfy demands that violate your principles. Do not mistake this discomfort for failure. You are not losing your place in life. You are recovering your place within yourself. The undisciplined mind believes rejection is evidence that something valuable has been taken away. The disciplined mind understands that rejection often reveals which attachments have become unhealthy. If your commitment to honesty causes another person to withdraw their approval, you have not lost honesty. If your refusal to compromise your principles disappoints someone seeking convenience, you have not diminished your character. You have simply uncovered where another person's expectations conflicted with your duty. Such discoveries are painful, but they are clarifying. Clarity is preferable to comfortable illusion. Begin each morning with a deliberate examination before the demands of the day begin speaking louder than reason. Sit quietly and ask yourself whose approval you expect to seek today. Be specific. Is it a superior at work? A family member? A friend? A stranger? Your own imagined audience? Once identified, remind yourself that none of these people possesses authority over your moral purpose. They may approve or disapprove, they may understand or misunderstand, their responses belong entirely to them. Your responsibility remains unchanged: to think carefully, act justly, speak truthfully, and govern yourself with discipline. Carry this reflection into every conversation. Before speaking, pause briefly. Ask yourself whether your next sentence arises from conviction or from the desire to impress. Many unnecessary words disappear when examined honestly. Much boasting is revealed as insecurity. Much agreement is exposed as fear. Much self-defense proves unnecessary because the soul no longer requires constant protection from imagined judgment. A measured silence often preserves dignity better than hurried explanation. There is particular strength in becoming comfortable with being misunderstood. This does not mean welcoming confusion or refusing to communicate clearly. It means accepting that complete control over another person's interpretation has never belonged to you. Once you have spoken honestly and acted honorably, the remaining judgment belongs elsewhere. Continuing to chase perfect understanding often becomes another form of seeking approval. You exhaust yourself attempting to manage minds that are not your own. Instead, fulfill your duty with clarity and leave the outcome where it belongs. You will also discover that praise carries dangers equal to criticism if received carelessly. Most people guard themselves against insults while opening every gate to compliments. Yet praise can become another chain when it encourages dependence. If you require admiration to remain motivated, your discipline has already weakened. If compliments determine your confidence, then criticism will inevitably determine your discouragement. The same attachment creates both conditions. Freedom requires independence from both. When appreciation arrives, receive it with gratitude, but without possession. Let it pass through your mind without allowing it to settle as the foundation of your identity. Appreciation acknowledges an action. It does not define the person. Continue your work tomorrow with the same diligence whether yesterday brought recognition or silence. This steadiness protects the soul from becoming inflated by success or discouraged by neglect. Each evening, examine not whether others valued your conduct, but whether your conduct deserved your own respect. Ask yourself where you spoke merely to be liked. Ask where you remained silent despite recognizing the truthful course. Ask where you adjusted your principles to avoid temporary discomfort. Then ask where you remained faithful to reason even when doing so required patience, restraint, or courage. This examination must remain honest but free from self-condemnation. The purpose is correction, not punishment. Every clear observation becomes material for tomorrow's improvement. Do not overlook the influence of comparison. The desire for approval often disguises itself through constant measurement against others. You compare achievements, appearance, possessions, recognition, influence, and status. Soon your attention abandons your own development entirely. You become occupied with another person's path while neglecting your own responsibilities. Comparison steals time that should be devoted to self-government. Another person's progress neither weakens nor strengthens your character. Only your own judgments possess that power. Whenever comparison appears, redirect your attention immediately. Ask whether your own reason has improved today. Ask whether your patience has increased. Ask whether your honesty remained intact during difficulty. Ask whether your self-command became stronger than yesterday. These questions restore the proper direction of effort. They remind you that your true work has always been internal. You will notice that those who constantly seek approval rarely experience genuine rest. Even moments of success bring only temporary satisfaction, because external validation always demands renewal. Yesterday's praise soon feels insufficient. Today's recognition creates anxiety about tomorrow's performance. The appetite grows while never reaching contentment. Such dependence resembles thirst rather than nourishment. The more it is satisfied, the more it expands. The disciplined soul escapes this endless pursuit by locating satisfaction where it cannot be withdrawn. Satisfaction comes from recognizing that you fulfilled your duty despite uncertainty. Satisfaction comes from knowing you remained patient under provocation. Satisfaction comes from speaking honestly despite inconvenience. Satisfaction comes from choosing justice when selfishness appeared easier. These victories require no witnesses because they transform the only character you are responsible for governing. Understand that refusing external validation does not mean becoming indifferent to others. It means serving others without becoming dependent upon their responses. Kindness remains valuable even when unnoticed. Fairness remains necessary even when unrewarded. Patience remains worthy even when misunderstood. Service rooted in virtue asks only whether the action itself accords with reason. It does not demand gratitude in return. There will be days when your efforts seem invisible. Honest work may pass without acknowledgement. Quiet integrity may receive little attention, while louder behavior attracts admiration. Resist the temptation to abandon your principles simply because they attract less recognition. Nature does not reward every seed immediately. Character develops through repeated action, regardless of whether others observe the process. Continue planting what is good. The harvest belongs to time, not impatience. Remember also that another person's approval often reveals more about their values than about your own conduct. Someone may admire your ambition while ignoring your honesty. Another may praise your confidence while overlooking your compassion. Another may celebrate your achievements while remaining blind to your discipline. Their attention follows their own priorities. Therefore, their approval cannot serve as an accurate measure of your progress. Let reason remain your measure, because reason alone evaluates according to virtue rather than preference. Practice willingly performing small acts of goodness that no one will ever notice. Complete necessary work without announcing it. Help another person without expecting acknowledgement. Keep promises that bring no public reward. Exercise self-restraint when no reputation depends upon it. These hidden actions strengthen the soul because they remove the possibility of performing virtue for display. They teach you to value the action itself rather than the attention surrounding it. Another valuable discipline is learning to leave conversations without mentally replaying them for hours afterward. Many people imprison themselves inside imaginary evaluations long after the discussion has ended. They wonder whether they appeared intelligent enough, confident enough, interesting enough, agreeable enough. This habit wastes attention upon matters already beyond control. Once the conversation concludes, your task concludes with it. Carry forward whatever lesson reason identifies. Leave behind everything else. You must also become cautious whenever you notice yourself altering your convictions merely because influential voices disagree. Respectful listening is valuable. Honest reconsideration is wise. Blind surrender is neither. Examine every argument according to reason rather than reputation. Truth does not become stronger because many repeat it. Error does not become correct because respected people defend it. Preserve the courage to stand quietly with what careful examination reveals to be right. If you discover that your entire mood rises and falls according to the responses of others, do not become discouraged. Instead, recognize that you have identified an important place requiring discipline. Every attachment revealed honestly becomes an opportunity for freedom. The purpose of self-examination is never to produce shame. It is to uncover where your judgment has wandered so that it may return to its proper guide. As this practice deepens, something remarkable begins to happen. Decisions become simpler because fewer voices occupy your mind. Conversations become calmer because you no longer defend an image at every opportunity. Relationships become healthier because they are no longer sustained by constant performance. Work becomes steadier because your effort no longer depends upon applause. Solitude becomes peaceful because you no longer require continual reassurance that your life possesses value. Eventually, you recognize a truth that was available from the beginning, but hidden beneath habit. Approval never possessed the power you imagined. It could encourage or discourage your emotions for a moment, but it never possessed authority over your character. That authority has always remained within your own judgment. You simply forgot to exercise it consistently. So begin today with quiet determination. Let your standard be reason rather than reputation. Let your satisfaction arise from disciplined conduct rather than public recognition. Let your conscience become stronger than your craving for acceptance. Refuse to measure your worth by voices that change with circumstance. Refuse to surrender your inner government to minds you cannot control. Walk through the day asking only whether each thought, each word, and each action reflects the person reason calls you to become. If the answer is yes, continue without seeking applause. If the answer is no, correct yourself without delay. This is the path of lasting freedom. This is how the soul gradually becomes independent of every approval except the quiet certainty that it has lived according to virtue. Number 3. Master emotional reactions through reason. The greatest battles of your life are not fought against other people. They are fought in the brief, almost invisible moments between what happens and what you decide it means. Most people never notice this interval because they have trained themselves to react before they have learned to examine. An unexpected word is spoken and anger appears. A plan fails, and despair immediately follows. A criticism is heard, and resentment rises without permission. A desire is frustrated, and impatience claims the mind. They believe these reactions are inevitable because they arrive so quickly. Yet speed does not make them true. What appears first is not always what deserves obedience. The disciplined life begins when you stop treating every emotion as a command and begin treating it as something that must answer to reason. You have spent years strengthening habits that now govern you without your awareness. Every repeated complaint has made complaint easier. Every uncontrolled outburst has prepared the next one. Every moment of self-pity has taught the mind to seek refuge in weakness instead of responsibility. Every time you excused an impulsive reaction by saying, "That is simply how I am," you surrendered another piece of your freedom. Character is not fixed by temperament. It is shaped by repeated judgments. What you repeatedly approve within yourself eventually becomes your nature. Look carefully at the moments that trouble you most. Very rarely is suffering created by the event alone. The greater burden comes from the interpretation that follows. An inconvenience becomes an outrage because you decide it should never have happened. A disappointment becomes hopeless because you conclude that your future has been destroyed. A careless remark becomes unbearable because you decide your worth has been diminished. The external event arrives first, but suffering expands through the judgment you attach to it. If the judgment changes, the experience changes with it. This is not denial of reality. It is the disciplined refusal to add unnecessary suffering to what has already occurred. Many people believe mastering emotion requires becoming cold, distant, or incapable of feeling. This misunderstanding keeps them from genuine discipline. Reason does not exist to destroy emotion. It exists to govern it. Just as a skilled captain does not eliminate the sea but learns to navigate it, the rational mind does not erase human feeling. It prevents feeling from taking command of the entire voyage. Fear may arise, but fear does not become the ruler. Anger may appear, but anger does not receive authority. Grief may visit, but grief does not become the permanent voice directing every decision. Emotion becomes a messenger rather than a master. Notice how quickly the mind creates stories from incomplete evidence. Someone fails to return your message, and you immediately imagine rejection. A colleague speaks briefly, and you assume hostility. A friend appears distracted, and you conclude the relationship has changed. None of these conclusions come from certainty. They come from an undisciplined habit of filling empty spaces with anxious interpretation. Before accepting any conclusion, ask yourself whether you possess facts or merely impressions. A rational person refuses to condemn reality before reality has fully revealed itself. Each morning, before entering the demands of the day, prepare your judgment instead of your expectations. Do not hope that every conversation will be pleasant or every effort rewarded. Prepare instead to meet whatever arrives with steadiness. Tell yourself that you will encounter impatience, misunderstanding, delay, temptation, and uncertainty. None of these conditions prevent you from acting with justice, moderation, courage, or wisdom. When difficulties eventually appear, they no longer surprise you. They become opportunities to exercise the discipline you have already chosen. One of the greatest mistakes is believing that emotional intensity proves moral importance. Strong feelings often convince you that immediate action is necessary. Anger insists that you must respond at once. Anxiety insists that every uncertainty demands resolution. Pride insists that every criticism requires defense. Yet urgency is often the enemy of wisdom. A disciplined mind creates distance before creating action. It refuses to let emotional pressure determine the timing of important decisions. Practice delaying your first response. When emotion rises, remain silent for a moment longer than habit prefers. This pause is not hesitation born of fear. It is the deliberate protection of your judgment. During that brief silence, ask what truly requires action. and what merely demands attention. Many conflicts disappear simply because they were never fed by immediate reaction. Many regrets never occur because reason was given enough time to speak before impulse took control. You must become suspicious of every thought that flatters your immediate emotion. When anger tells you that retaliation will restore your dignity, examine it carefully. When fear tells you retreat is the safest path, question whether it protects wisdom or merely avoids discomfort. When desire promises lasting satisfaction through immediate pleasure, investigate whether it serves your character or weakens it. The mind under emotional influence argues persuasively on behalf of temporary impulses. Only disciplined examination reveals whether those arguments deserve acceptance. The habit of complaint deserves particular attention because it disguises weakness as honesty. Complaining often feels justified because it describes real difficulties, yet describing hardship is not the same as surrendering to it emotionally. Ask yourself whether your complaint improves your judgment or merely strengthens frustration. If it produces no wiser action, then it has become another exercise in self-inflicted disturbance. The disciplined soul acknowledges difficulty without multiplying it through repeated dissatisfaction. There are moments when another person's behavior invites your anger. They may speak unfairly, behave selfishly, or fail to fulfill their responsibilities. At such times, remember that another person's lack of discipline does not require you to abandon your own. If another person loses command of themselves, that is their burden. If you lose command of yourself in response, the burden becomes yours as well. Never allow another person's disorder to become permission for your own. Observe how often you demand that reality conform to your preferences before allowing yourself peace. You insist that plans unfold perfectly, that people behave consistently, that circumstances remain favorable, that success arrive according to your schedule. Every expectation creates another opportunity for disappointment because none of these conditions belong entirely within your authority. Peace grows stronger when you demand less obedience from fortune and more discipline from yourself. Whenever disappointment appears, direct your attention toward the one question that matters: what remains within my responsibility at this moment? Perhaps an opportunity has disappeared. Perhaps recognition has been withheld. Perhaps circumstances have changed unexpectedly. None of these conditions removes your ability to think clearly, speak honestly, or act honorably. The situation may have narrowed your options, but it has not taken away your capacity for virtue. Return your attention there immediately. Do not confuse emotional suppression with emotional mastery. Suppression buries disturbance without examining it. Eventually it returns with greater force because nothing has been understood. Mastery requires investigation. Ask why a particular event unsettled you so deeply. What belief was threatened? What expectation was frustrated? What attachment was exposed? Every powerful emotional reaction reveals something your mind has been treating as essential. Once identified, that attachment can be examined according to reason instead of habit. Train yourself to recognize the physical signs that emotion has begun seeking control: a tightened jaw, hurried speech, restless movement, shallow breathing, the urge to interrupt, the desire to prove yourself immediately. These are signals that the mind is drifting away from deliberate judgment. Instead of following these impulses automatically, treat them as reminders to slow your thinking. The body often announces the arrival of emotional disturbance before the mind fully understands it. There is wisdom in asking whether the matter before you will retain its importance after sufficient time has passed. Many reactions lose their urgency when viewed from a greater distance. What appears unbearable today often becomes insignificant after honest reflection. By extending your perspective, you weaken the illusion that every emotional impulse deserves immediate obedience. Time frequently reveals which concerns belong to passing circumstances and which concern genuine character. Another valuable discipline is refusing to assign permanent meaning to temporary emotions. Feeling discouraged today does not prove failure. Feeling anxious does not prove danger. Feeling uncertain does not prove incapacity. Emotions report your present condition, not your final reality. The rational mind listens without surrendering authority. It acknowledges the feeling while reserving judgment until reason has completed its examination. Throughout the day, practice returning your attention to the quality of your own conduct instead of the behavior surrounding you. Another person's impatience cannot prevent your patience. Another person's dishonesty cannot remove your honesty. Another person's arrogance cannot diminish your humility. Every moment presents the same opportunity to govern yourself according to reason regardless of what others choose. This independence is the beginning of genuine strength. There will be occasions when grief enters your life through genuine loss. Do not imagine that discipline requires pretending such pain does not exist. The disciplined person does not deny human affection or the sorrow that follows separation. What reason protects is not the absence of sadness, but the refusal to let sorrow destroy the entire order of the soul. Continue fulfilling your responsibilities. Continue speaking truthfully. Continue acting justly. Grief may accompany these actions, but it need not replace them. Likewise, moments of success require discipline, no less than moments of hardship. Excitement easily persuades the mind that present fortune will continue indefinitely. Pride begins expanding beyond what reason can support. Confidence quietly transforms into carelessness. Receive success with gratitude, but without intoxication. Remember that favorable circumstances remain temporary guests. Let your stability depend upon your character, rather than your current condition. Each evening, withdraw from distraction and review the movements of your own mind. Ask where emotion attempted to become your ruler. Identify the moment when irritation entered your speech, when fear narrowed your judgment, when desire weakened your restraint, or when pride sought unnecessary recognition. Do not perform this examination to accuse yourself endlessly. Perform it so tomorrow's judgment becomes wiser than today's. Improvement belongs to those willing to observe themselves without excuses. As this discipline grows stronger, you will discover something remarkable. The world around you changes far less than your experience of it. Difficult people remain difficult. Unexpected setbacks continue to appear. Delays, criticism, uncertainty and loss remain part of human existence. Yet their power over your inner life steadily diminishes because they no longer pass through an unguarded mind. Every event must first stand before reason before receiving permission to shape your response. The undisciplined person believes freedom means expressing every feeling immediately. The disciplined person understands that freedom means choosing which feelings deserve action. One life is governed by impulse, the other is governed by deliberate judgment. Only one of these paths leads toward lasting tranquility. Do not expect this transformation to arrive through inspiration alone. It is built through countless ordinary moments in which you choose examination over assumption, patience over haste, steadiness over complaint, and reason over impulse. Every conversation offers practice. Every disappointment offers practice. Every temptation offers practice. Every inconvenience offers practice. The soul becomes reliable through repeated acts of self-government performed when no one else notices. Eventually you will recognize that your greatest victories are often invisible. They occur when you remain composed while anger invites retaliation. They occur when fear fails to dictate your choices. They occur when disappointment does not corrupt your integrity. They occur when praise fails to inflate your pride and criticism fails to wound your purpose. These quiet triumphs reshape the foundation of your character far more deeply than any outward success. Carry this understanding into tomorrow. Before accepting any emotion as truth, place it before the judgment of reason. Before speaking, examine whether your words arise from virtue or disturbance. Before reacting, ask whether your response strengthens or weakens the person you are becoming. Let every difficulty remind you that your greatest responsibility is not controlling events but governing your own mind. When reason consistently occupies the highest place within you, emotional storms lose the authority they once possessed. They still pass through your life, but they no longer determine its direction. That is the beginning of true self-mastery, and from that foundation no passing circumstance can easily overthrow the disciplined soul. Number 4. Never surrender your inner freedom. Before you ask whether you are free, ask a more difficult question: who governs the direction of your mind? Many people speak proudly of freedom while living as servants to every passing circumstance. Their peace disappears because of an unexpected message. Their confidence rises and falls with the opinions of strangers. Their purpose weakens when comfort becomes unavailable. Their temper changes because another person chooses harsh words instead of thoughtful ones. Nothing external places chains upon them, yet they remain controlled from morning until night. The greatest form of captivity is not visible. It exists whenever your inner life waits for permission from the outside world before it can remain steady. You often imagine that freedom begins when circumstances improve. You tell yourself that you will become calm once problems disappear, courageous once fear fades, disciplined once life becomes easier, and content once success finally arrives. Yet this belief quietly postpones your entire life. It teaches you to depend upon conditions you cannot command. Every time you place your tranquility at the mercy of changing events, you surrender authority over yourself. No lasting freedom can be built upon what fortune may give today and remove tomorrow. Look honestly at the moments when you say, "They made me angry," or "This situation ruined my day." Hidden inside these ordinary expressions is a dangerous habit of thought. You have assigned ownership of your inner condition to something beyond your own judgment. Without realizing it, you have declared that another person possesses greater influence over your character than your own reason. This is not merely inaccurate. It is the beginning of self-imposed slavery. Your emotional state should never become another person's possession. The first responsibility of a disciplined mind is to reclaim what has been handed away through habit. You cannot prevent unexpected events from entering your life. You cannot require every person to behave with fairness, patience, or wisdom. You cannot persuade reality to arrange itself according to your preferences. Yet none of these limitations diminish your ability to determine the quality of your own response. This responsibility remains available in every circumstance. It cannot be confiscated unless you willingly abandon it. Many people surrender their inner freedom without recognizing the moment it happens. It begins with small compromises. You remain silent when honesty requires speech because you fear disapproval. You agree with what you know is false because disagreement feels uncomfortable. You neglect your responsibilities because temporary pleasure appears more attractive than disciplined effort. None of these choices seem significant in isolation, yet together they slowly train the soul to obey convenience instead of reason. The loss of freedom rarely arrives suddenly. It grows through repeated acts of self-betrayal. Every morning presents the same essential question before the world begins demanding your attention. What will guide your decisions today? Will they be directed by principle or by impulse? Will comfort determine your actions, or will your commitment to virtue remain stronger than temporary feelings? Begin the day by deciding that your conduct will not depend upon favorable conditions. Resolve to carry your standards with you instead of borrowing them from whatever circumstances happen to appear. As the day unfolds, you will encounter invitations to surrender your independence. Some invitations arrive through praise, others arrive through criticism. Some appear as fear of failure, others disguise themselves as promises of pleasure or recognition. None announce themselves openly as threats to your character. They simply encourage you to neglect your better judgment for the sake of immediate relief. Learn to recognize these moments. They are not interruptions to your practice. They are the practice itself. There is remarkable strength in refusing to let discomfort dictate your choices. Much of human weakness grows from the belief that unpleasant feelings must be escaped immediately. A difficult conversation becomes impossible because embarrassment is feared. Necessary work is postponed because effort feels exhausting. Honest reflection is avoided because self-examination exposes uncomfortable truths. Yet discomfort possesses no authority over your decisions unless you grant it that authority. Feeling resistance does not require surrendering to it. When you notice yourself avoiding what reason identifies as necessary, stop and examine the avoidance carefully. Ask what exactly you fear. Is it physical hardship, damaged reputation, temporary failure, or wounded pride? Continue questioning until the attachment becomes visible. Every avoidance conceals something the mind has elevated beyond its proper place. Once exposed, that attachment loses much of its ability to command you. You may discover that your greatest prison has never been another person's influence, but your own unwillingness to endure temporary difficulty. Comfort has quietly become your ruler. Whenever inconvenience appears, your judgment immediately seeks escape instead of endurance. This habit weakens every part of your character because it teaches the soul to negotiate with duty whenever discipline becomes demanding. Freedom requires a different habit. It requires remaining faithful to what is right, even when doing so carries an immediate cost. Guard yourself against the belief that external success proves internal freedom. A person may possess wealth, influence, admiration, and authority while remaining completely dependent upon them. The fear of losing these advantages becomes another chain. Every achievement that cannot be released without panic has become an object of dependence rather than proper use. True independence does not require rejecting external goods. It requires refusing to build your identity upon them. Whenever fortune grants favorable circumstances, receive them with gratitude and moderation. Use them responsibly without imagining they define your worth. If they remain, continue acting virtuously. If they disappear, continue acting virtuously. The disciplined soul does not confuse possession with purpose. Material conditions change repeatedly throughout life. Character remains the only possession that deserves constant protection. One of the clearest signs that inner freedom is growing is the ability to remain consistent across changing situations. You do not become generous only when prosperous. You do not become patient only when everything proceeds according to plan. You do not become honest only when honesty brings advantage. Your conduct begins flowing from stable principles rather than shifting circumstances. Consistency transforms virtue from occasional behavior into enduring character. Train yourself throughout the day to pause whenever strong desires arise. Ask whether the object before you truly deserves the authority you are preparing to give it. Every intense craving makes a silent promise that satisfaction lies just beyond immediate possession. Examine that promise carefully. Has every previous desire fulfilled its claims, or has one craving simply been replaced by another? Freedom increases whenever you discover that contentment depends less upon acquiring more and more upon governing your own appetite. Likewise, examine your fears with equal honesty. Fear often enlarges future possibilities until they appear larger than present reality. The mind begins imagining humiliation before any failure has occurred, rejection before any conversation has happened, disaster before any evidence appears. By accepting these imagined outcomes as certain, you begin obeying events that exist only in speculation. Return your attention to what actually stands before you. Act according to reason in the present moment rather than fantasies about tomorrow. Throughout ordinary life, countless opportunities appear to strengthen your independence. Wait patiently in a long line without irritation claiming your thoughts. Complete routine responsibilities without demanding constant excitement. Accept correction without immediate defensiveness. Endure delays without believing the world has treated you unfairly. These ordinary situations develop the same discipline required during life's greater trials. Character is formed long before extraordinary moments reveal it. Pay close attention to the conversations taking place within your own mind. Whenever you hear yourself saying, "I cannot bear this," examine whether the statement is true. Often what you actually mean is, "I do not prefer this." These are profoundly different judgments. Human beings endure far more than they imagine possible. Weakness frequently begins by exaggerating discomfort until it appears unbearable. Correct the judgment, and endurance becomes easier than the mind first believed. Another habit that quietly steals freedom is constant comparison with other lives. You begin measuring your circumstances against someone else's fortune, recognition, possessions, or opportunities. Soon your attention abandons your own duties entirely. Envy persuades you that happiness exists somewhere outside the path already assigned to you. Meanwhile, your present responsibilities remain neglected. Freedom requires complete attention to the work that belongs to your own life, rather than endless fascination with another person's journey. Make time each day to withdraw briefly from noise and distraction. Sit quietly without seeking entertainment, conversation, or constant stimulation. Observe the movements of your own mind. Notice how quickly it reaches outward, searching for something to occupy itself. This practice reveals how dependent attention has become upon external activity. Gradually teach the mind to remain settled in its own company. A person unable to sit peacefully with themselves will always seek escape through circumstances beyond their control. Another essential discipline is learning to distinguish between obligation and emotional preference. There will be many days when you feel unmotivated, discouraged, or uncertain. Your responsibilities remain unchanged. Justice does not become optional because enthusiasm has faded. Integrity does not wait for better moods. Self-command means allowing reason to determine action, even when emotion offers little encouragement. The disciplined life is built through faithful conduct during ordinary days, not merely inspired moments. When another person attempts to provoke you, recognize that they cannot complete the act without your participation. They may offer insult, disrespect, or accusation. These remain external actions until your own judgment grants them entrance into your inner life. You always possess the opportunity to examine what has been presented before deciding how much significance it deserves. This examination preserves your independence. It prevents another person's confusion from becoming your own. Practice speaking less when emotion encourages immediate explanation. Many unnecessary conflicts continue only because pride insists upon defending every misunderstanding. Not every accusation deserves a response. Not every disagreement requires victory. Preserve your energy for matters where virtue genuinely calls you to act. Silence chosen by reason differs greatly from silence imposed by fear. One protects dignity, the other abandons it. As evening approaches, examine the moments when your inner freedom was challenged. Identify where comfort almost persuaded you to neglect discipline. Notice where another person's behavior nearly redirected your character. Observe where anxiety attempted to replace thoughtful judgment. Do not perform this review with bitterness. Perform it with clarity. Every honest observation strengthens tomorrow's vigilance. Every recognized weakness becomes another place where greater discipline can develop. Never seek perfection through discouragement. Improvement belongs to patient repetition rather than harsh self-condemnation. If you discover that you surrendered your inner freedom several times today, let this recognition become instruction instead of despair. The disciplined person falls short, studies the cause carefully, and returns immediately to practice. Progress belongs to those who refuse both arrogance during success and hopelessness during failure. As your training deepens, something extraordinary begins to happen. Circumstances lose their ability to determine the atmosphere of your inner life. You still experience disappointment, uncertainty, fatigue, and loss. Yet these experiences no longer possess unrestricted access to your judgment. Before entering your character, every event must first pass through the examination of reason. Some disturbances are admitted as worthy concerns, many others quietly dissolve because they never deserved authority in the first place. This transformation also changes your relationships. You stop demanding that others carry responsibility for your emotional stability. You stop expecting friends, family, or colleagues to preserve your peace by behaving perfectly. Instead, you arrive with your own discipline already prepared. You offer patience instead of requiring constant reassurance. You offer fairness instead of demanding continual agreement. Relationships become healthier because they are no longer burdened with maintaining a freedom that only you can protect. Eventually, you discover that inner freedom is not a reward granted after life's difficulties disappear. It is a daily practice maintained while those difficulties continue. It is strengthened each time you refuse to exchange integrity for convenience. It grows each time you choose thoughtful judgment instead of impulsive reaction. It becomes steady each time you remember that your highest responsibility is governing yourself rather than controlling the world around you. Carry this understanding into every new day. Let no praise persuade you to abandon humility. Let no criticism tempt you toward resentment. Let no hardship convince you that virtue has become impossible. Let no comfort lull you into neglecting discipline. Protect your inner life with greater care than any possession, because everything else may be taken without your consent. Your capacity to think rightly, choose honorably, and remain faithful to reason is the one domain that must never be surrendered. Preserve it with unwavering attention, and you will possess a freedom that neither changing fortune nor changing people can ever truly overcome. Number 5. Detach from praise and criticism. There is a subtle chain that binds more people than hardship ever could. It is forged from two opposite forces that appear to be enemies but are in truth the same master. One is praise, the other is criticism. Most people believe they fear only criticism, yet they cling to praise with equal dependence. They rejoice when admired and collapse when condemned. Their peace rises with applause and falls with disapproval. They call this living among people, but it is actually surrendering their inner government to voices they do not control. If another person's opinion can lift your spirit beyond reason or crush it beneath despair, then your peace has never truly belonged to you. Look carefully at how your day is shaped. A kind remark makes your work seem worthwhile. A careless comment causes you to question your entire character. One compliment fills you with confidence. One criticism follows you for hours, perhaps even years. The event itself passes quickly, yet your mind continues carrying it long after the words have disappeared. This is not because praise and criticism possess extraordinary power. It is because your judgment has quietly assigned them authority they were never meant to hold. The disciplined life begins by refusing to mistake another person's opinion for a measure of truth. Every human being judges according to their own understanding, desires, fears, experiences, and limitations. One person admires restraint while another praises excess. One respects honesty while another rewards deception. One criticizes you for remaining silent while another criticizes you for speaking. If your character changes with every opinion you encounter, then your life becomes directionless because public judgment never remains constant. What changes from one moment to the next cannot become the foundation upon which a stable soul is built. Examine the hidden bargain you make whenever you seek approval. You promise to shape your conduct according to someone else's expectations, and in return you hope to receive temporary comfort. This agreement always costs more than it appears. Every attempt to secure admiration by abandoning your own judgment weakens your trust in yourself. You begin listening less carefully to reason because you have trained your attention toward the reactions of others. Over time, your own conscience grows quieter while the voices surrounding you become louder. The greatest loss is not that people influence you. The greatest loss is that you stop recognizing your own inner guide. The desire to avoid criticism often disguises itself as wisdom. You tell yourself that remaining agreeable prevents conflict. You convince yourself that changing your convictions demonstrates flexibility. Yet there are moments when avoiding disapproval simply means avoiding duty. Truth sometimes carries consequences. Justice occasionally requires standing apart from those around you. Integrity may demand silence when others expect agreement or firm speech when others prefer comfort. If criticism persuades you to neglect what reason has already shown to be right, then your fear has become stronger than your character. Do not imagine that praise deserves easier acceptance simply because it feels pleasant. Praise can intoxicate the mind as easily as criticism can wound it. The person who becomes dependent upon admiration gradually begins performing goodness for recognition rather than because goodness itself is worthy. Their attention shifts away from virtue and toward appearance. Instead of asking whether an action is just, they ask whether it will be noticed. Instead of examining the quality of their character, they begin managing the image others hold of them. The soul slowly exchanges substance for performance. Every morning, before stepping into conversations, responsibilities, and unpredictable encounters, prepare your mind with a simple discipline. Tell yourself that today you may receive appreciation without deserving it, and you may receive blame without earning it. Neither possibility changes your obligation. Your task remains exactly the same. Think clearly, speak honestly, act justly, exercise self-command. Whether others celebrate these efforts or overlook them entirely belongs to their judgment, not yours. By beginning the day with this understanding, you prevent unexpected opinions from becoming unexpected rulers. Throughout the day, observe your immediate reactions whenever someone speaks about you. Notice whether your mind rushes to defend itself before understanding what has actually been said. Notice whether compliments tempt you toward pride or criticism tempts you toward resentment. These reactions reveal where attachment still exists. The purpose is not to eliminate feeling, but to prevent feeling from becoming unquestioned authority. Every opinion should first pass before reason. Ask whether it contains truth, error, or a mixture of both. Accept correction where it is deserved. Release the remainder without bitterness. One of the greatest strengths you can develop is the ability to separate information from emotion. A harsh criticism may still contain useful instruction. A beautiful compliment may still contain false judgment. If you reject criticism merely because it hurts, you may lose an opportunity to improve. If you accept praise merely because it pleases you, you may strengthen illusions about yourself. Examine both with equal seriousness. Ask not whether they comfort or disturb you, but whether they correspond to reality. There are people who will misunderstand your intentions, regardless of how carefully you explain yourself. There are others who will admire qualities you do not actually possess. Neither misunderstanding defines who you are. Human judgment is often incomplete because no one else has direct access to your motives, your inner struggles, or the discipline behind your actions. They observe fragments and build conclusions. You alone carry the responsibility of examining your own conscience with complete honesty. Train yourself to perform worthy actions that no one is likely to notice. Complete difficult work without announcing your effort. Offer assistance without waiting for gratitude. Fulfill promises even when no reward follows. Correct your own mistakes before anyone else discovers them. These quiet disciplines strengthen the soul because they remove the temptation to seek external recognition. They remind you that virtue possesses its own fulfillment independent of observation. There will be moments when criticism reveals genuine faults. Welcome these moments without defensiveness. An undisciplined mind protects its pride by rejecting uncomfortable truths. A disciplined mind welcomes correction because it values improvement more than appearance. If someone accurately exposes impatience, dishonesty, laziness, or arrogance within you, they have pointed toward work that already needed to be done. The discomfort lies not in hearing the truth, but in resisting it. Accept the lesson, correct the fault, and continue your practice without resentment. There will also be moments when accusations are unfair. Others may assign motives you never held or judge actions they barely understand. In such moments, remember that another person's misunderstanding cannot alter your character unless you permit it to disturb your own judgment. Continue acting according to reason. Time may clarify what words cannot. Even if it does not, your responsibility remains unchanged. You are accountable for your conduct, not for controlling every conclusion formed by other minds. Pay close attention to the habit of mentally replaying conversations long after they have ended. Many people imprison themselves inside imaginary courtrooms where they continually defend their actions before invisible judges. They repeat every sentence, searching for approval they can no longer obtain or arguing against criticism that has already passed. This habit steals attention from the present moment and wastes energy upon events beyond correction. Once a conversation has ended, retain only the lesson reason identifies. Release everything else. Another discipline worthy of daily practice is refusing to measure the value of your work by immediate recognition. Honest effort often unfolds quietly. Patience rarely receives applause. Self-restraint attracts little attention. Careful thinking seldom produces dramatic praise. Yet these are precisely the habits that strengthen character. If your motivation depends upon visible acknowledgement, your discipline will weaken whenever recognition fails to appear. Let the quality of your efforts satisfy your conscience before you ever consider whether others have noticed. You must also examine the temptation to build an identity from compliments. Perhaps people praise your intelligence, your generosity, your confidence, or your success. Receive these words with gratitude but without attachment. The moment you begin believing that your worth depends upon maintaining a particular image, anxiety quietly enters your life. You become afraid of mistakes because they threaten your reputation. You begin performing rather than living. Protect yourself by remembering that character is demonstrated through consistent action, not secured through flattering descriptions. As the day unfolds, repeatedly ask yourself a single question whenever strong reactions arise from another person's opinion. Does this concern my character or merely my reputation? Character belongs to your own choices. Reputation exists inside the minds of others. One deserves careful attention because it remains within your responsibility. The other deserves measured concern because it can never be fully directed by your efforts. Confusing these two creates endless unrest. Practice speaking with the same honesty, whether praise is likely or criticism is certain. Let truth determine your words rather than anticipated reactions. Sometimes reason requires gentle encouragement. Sometimes it requires respectful disagreement. Sometimes it requires complete silence. Choose according to what is appropriate, not according to which response promises greater approval. Consistency of principle gradually replaces dependence upon acceptance. As evening arrives, withdraw from the noise of the day and examine yourself carefully. Do not ask how many people admired you. Do not ask how many approved of your decisions. Instead, ask whether you remained faithful to reason when admiration tempted your pride and criticism tested your steadiness. Ask whether you accepted correction without humiliation and rejected empty flattery without arrogance. Ask whether your conscience remained clearer than your concern for reputation. These are the questions that cultivate genuine freedom. You will discover that much unnecessary suffering disappears when you stop interpreting every opinion as a verdict upon your worth. Human beings speak from changing emotions, incomplete knowledge, personal preferences, and temporary impressions. Their words may contain wisdom, error, kindness, misunderstanding, or all of these together. Listen carefully, examine patiently, and decide thoughtfully. Never surrender judgment merely because another voice speaks with confidence. There is also wisdom in allowing praise to pass through your mind without lingering there. Enjoy gratitude without constructing identity from admiration. A compliment received today cannot guarantee virtuous conduct tomorrow. Each new day requires fresh discipline. Yesterday's approval cannot perform today's duties on your behalf. Return your attention immediately to the work of governing yourself. Likewise, allow criticism to leave without leaving scars upon your soul. If it contains truth, transform it into instruction. If it contains falsehood, transform it into patience. In either case, let it become material for growth rather than fuel for resentment. No opinion deserves permanent residence within a disciplined mind unless it strengthens virtue. As your practice deepens, you will notice a profound change. Conversations become lighter because you no longer carry the burden of proving yourself. Decisions become clearer because they arise from principle instead of anticipated applause. Relationships become healthier because they are grounded in sincerity rather than performance. Your work becomes steadier because your effort no longer depends upon recognition. Even solitude becomes more peaceful because your conscience provides a quieter and more reliable companion than public approval ever could. The world will continue offering both admiration and criticism for as long as you live. Neither can be prevented, and neither needs to be feared. They are simply sounds passing through the air until your judgment decides what they will become. If you accept every compliment as proof of greatness, pride will gradually govern you. If you accept every criticism as proof of failure, discouragement will soon follow. Refuse both extremes. Let reason examine each opinion with calm attention and measured honesty. Carry this discipline into every new morning. Let your first commitment be to govern your own mind before encountering the judgments of others. Let your satisfaction arise from living according to virtue rather than collecting approval. Let correction refine you without humiliating you, and let admiration encourage gratitude without awakening vanity. Build your life upon the one foundation that cannot be granted or withdrawn by another person's voice, the steady practice of wisdom, justice, courage, and self-command. When your character becomes your measure instead of your reputation, praise loses the power to inflate you, criticism loses the power to break you, and your inner freedom remains firmly in your own hands. Number 6. Govern desires before they govern. Every chain that binds the human mind begins with a promise. Desire approaches quietly and speaks with confidence. It tells you that peace waits just beyond one more possession, one more success, one more pleasure, one more victory, one more moment of comfort. It convinces you that your life remains incomplete until something outside yourself is finally obtained. Because the promise feels persuasive, you obey without examination. You begin arranging your thoughts, your time, your relationships, and your character around whatever desire has declared essential. Yet what first appeared as a simple wish gradually becomes a ruler. The greatest danger is not that you desire many things. The danger is that you never question whether your desires deserve your obedience. Look honestly at the movement of your own mind throughout an ordinary day. How often do your thoughts race ahead towards something you do not yet possess? You tell yourself that satisfaction will arrive after the next achievement, after greater recognition, after more comfort, after another opportunity, after someone finally behaves as you expect. In every case, your contentment is postponed. The present moment is treated merely as a bridge leading toward an imagined future where peace supposedly awaits. While chasing that future, you neglect the only place where reason can actually govern your life, the present decision before you. Many people assume that every desire deserves fulfillment simply because it feels natural. This belief quietly places impulse above judgment. Hunger appears, so excess follows. Comfort calls, so discipline is abandoned. Ambition grows, so integrity is negotiated. Anger demands satisfaction, so harsh words are spoken. The mind becomes accustomed to serving every appetite without asking whether that appetite strengthens or weakens the soul. A life governed this way appears free from restraint, but in reality it has become obedient to every passing impulse. There is nothing inherently wrong with preferring health over illness, sufficiency over poverty, friendship over loneliness, or success over failure. The danger begins when preference transforms into dependence. The moment you decide that happiness cannot exist without obtaining a particular outcome, you have surrendered your peace to something beyond your command. Desire then ceases to be a preference and becomes a demand. Whatever can disturb your tranquility by remaining absent has already acquired too much authority over your inner life. The disciplined person does not attempt to destroy desire. Instead, desire is examined before it is trusted. Every longing must stand before reason and answer an important question. Will following this impulse strengthen my character, or will it make me more dependent upon circumstances? Many desires cannot survive this examination because they were built upon illusion rather than necessity. They promised fulfillment while quietly increasing attachment. Begin every morning by preparing your judgment before desire begins presenting its arguments. Sit quietly and remind yourself that throughout the day countless attractions will compete for your attention. Some will invite comfort instead of responsibility. Others will promise immediate pleasure instead of lasting discipline. Still others will tempt you to pursue admiration instead of virtue. Resolve before these moments arrive that no impulse will become your master without first receiving the approval of reason. This preparation creates strength long before temptation appears. Observe how desire often disguises itself as urgency. The mind insists that satisfaction cannot wait. It whispers that immediate action is necessary. Yet many impulses lose their force when they are required to wait. Delay becomes a powerful discipline because it separates genuine necessity from restless craving. Whenever you strongly want something, practice waiting before acting. During that pause, ask whether your judgment remains clear or whether emotion has already begun deciding on your behalf. One of the clearest signs that desire has become unhealthy is the inability to remain peaceful without its fulfillment. If your mood collapses whenever plans change, if your patience disappears whenever comfort is interrupted, or if disappointment immediately becomes resentment, then your attachment has quietly grown beyond its proper place. Such moments should not discourage you, they should instruct you. They reveal precisely where your freedom requires further discipline. Throughout your life, desire will continually promise certainty through external achievement. It will tell you that once you obtain a particular position, relationship, possession, or reputation, lasting security will finally appear. Yet consider your own experience. How many previous desires announced themselves as the final answer? How many accomplishments that once seemed essential gradually became ordinary? How many pleasures quickly demanded replacement by something new? The appetite that depends upon external fulfillment rarely concludes with contentment. It simply changes direction. Train yourself to distinguish between what is useful and what is necessary. Many things may improve your circumstances without determining the quality of your character. You may prefer success, yet integrity remains possible without it. You may welcome comfort, yet discipline does not depend upon comfort. You may enjoy recognition, yet justice requires no applause. When reason preserves this distinction, desire loses much of its power to disturb the soul. There will be moments when you deeply want circumstances to unfold according to your own design. You will hope for immediate answers, favorable outcomes, smooth relationships, and uninterrupted progress. When reality chooses another course, frustration naturally attempts to enter the mind. Before accepting that frustration, ask yourself whether the world ever promised obedience to your preferences. Much suffering begins when expectation quietly transforms into entitlement. The disciplined person meets reality as it exists, rather than demanding that it satisfy every personal wish. Practice voluntary restraint in small matters before greater temptations arrive. Occasionally choose simplicity where luxury is available. Delay minor pleasures without resentment. Complete necessary work before seeking recreation. Eat with moderation even when abundance surrounds you. These practices are not punishments. They are exercises that remind the soul it remains stronger than its appetites. By willingly refusing yourself what you could easily take, you strengthen the ability to refuse what should never be taken. Notice also how easily desire borrows the language of reason. It rarely announces itself honestly. Instead, it constructs persuasive arguments. It tells you that this single compromise will not matter. It insists that discipline can begin tomorrow. It claims that everyone else behaves the same way. It promises that immediate indulgence will somehow improve future self-control. Examine these arguments carefully. Most impulses become weaker the moment they are required to defend themselves before an honest conscience. One particularly dangerous desire is the longing to control outcomes that never belonged to you. You want another person's respect, another person's affection, another person's agreement, another person's gratitude. You begin shaping your peace around responses you cannot command. The more intensely you crave these results, the more vulnerable your inner life becomes. Instead, direct your effort toward what truly belongs to you, the quality of your own conduct. Let others respond according to their own judgment, while you remain faithful to yours. Another form of desire appears through endless comparison. You look at another person's success and quietly decide that your own life cannot be sufficient until it resembles theirs. Gratitude weakens because attention abandons present responsibilities in pursuit of imagined superiority. Envy persuades you that someone else's path contains the fulfillment your own has failed to provide. This illusion blinds you to the work reason has already placed before you. Your duty exists where you stand, not where another person happens to be. As the day unfolds, repeatedly ask yourself whether your actions arise from deliberate choice or from restless appetite. Are you speaking because truth requires speech, or because you crave attention? Are you working because excellence deserves effort, or because recognition has become your hidden reward? Are you purchasing, consuming, or pursuing because reason approves, or because emptiness seeks distraction? These questions expose motives that habit often conceals. There will be occasions when desire becomes especially persuasive during moments of fatigue, disappointment, or loneliness. A tired mind seeks comfort without examination. A discouraged mind seeks escape instead of endurance. A lonely mind accepts poor judgment simply to avoid temporary isolation. Learn to distrust strong impulses that appear while your judgment is weakened by emotional exhaustion. Wait until reason has regained its proper clarity before making significant decisions. Another valuable discipline is learning to enjoy what you possess without clinging to it. Appreciate friendship while remembering that every relationship belongs to changing circumstances. Value health while accepting that the body remains subject to nature. Use material possessions responsibly while recognizing they are temporary companions rather than permanent foundations. Gratitude without attachment preserves both joy and freedom. Possession becomes dangerous only when identity begins depending upon it. Each evening, examine your desires with complete honesty. Ask which impulses directed your choices today. Identify where convenience persuaded you to neglect responsibility. Notice where impatience replaced thoughtful judgment. Observe where ambition tempted you to value results more highly than character. Do not excuse these moments, but do not condemn yourself endlessly either. Every recognized weakness becomes an opportunity for stronger discipline tomorrow. As this practice continues, you will discover that governing desire does not make life smaller. It makes life clearer. You begin appreciating ordinary moments because contentment no longer waits for extraordinary circumstances. Your decisions become steadier because they arise from principle rather than appetite. Relationships become healthier because people are no longer treated as instruments for satisfying emotional needs. Work becomes more meaningful because excellence replaces endless ambition as your primary aim. You will also notice that fear begins losing much of its influence. Fear and desire often travel together. You fear losing whatever you desperately want. You fear missing opportunities your appetite has declared essential. You fear criticism because you desire approval. As attachment weakens, fear loses the foundation upon which it once stood. The soul becomes lighter because it carries fewer unnecessary demands into each new day. Do not mistake simplicity for deprivation. The person who requires little from fortune possesses a wealth that cannot easily be stolen. Satisfaction grounded in disciplined judgment remains available during prosperity and hardship alike. Such contentment does not depend upon possessing everything. It depends upon refusing to become possessed by anything. Remember that every desire you encourage becomes easier to obey tomorrow, just as every desire you govern becomes easier to govern again. Character grows through repetition. If you repeatedly surrender to impulse, impulse gradually becomes habit. If you repeatedly return authority to reason, reason gradually becomes your natural guide. Every ordinary decision quietly shapes the direction of your life. There will always be another object inviting your attention, another comfort promising relief, another ambition insisting that fulfillment lies just beyond your current circumstances. Do not spend your life chasing moving horizons. Stand where you are. Examine what truly deserves pursuit. Ask whether your next step strengthens wisdom, justice, courage, and self-command, or merely satisfies another passing appetite. Only one of these paths leads toward lasting freedom. Carry this discipline into tomorrow with unwavering resolve. Before every significant choice, pause long enough for reason to examine the desire requesting your obedience. If the impulse supports virtue, pursue it with steadiness. If it weakens your character, release it without regret. Let your mind become a place where no craving receives unquestioned authority. Let your peace depend upon disciplined judgment rather than fulfilled appetite. When desire serves reason instead of ruling it, your life is no longer driven by endless wanting. It is directed by the quiet strength of a soul that has learned to govern itself before attempting to govern anything else. Number 7. Accept fate without becoming passive. The moment life refuses to follow your plans, your character is revealed. It is easy to speak about discipline when events move according to your wishes. It is easy to believe you possess inner strength when success arrives without resistance. The true examination begins when reality chooses another direction. A door closes after years of effort. A trusted relationship changes beyond repair. An illness interrupts carefully arranged ambitions. a loss appears without warning. In these moments, most people begin fighting not only the event itself, but also the fact that it has happened. They exhaust themselves arguing with reality, demanding that the past become different from what it already is. This struggle never changes the event. It only weakens the person resisting it. Many misunderstand acceptance because they confuse it with surrender. They imagine that accepting fate means abandoning effort, lowering standards, or becoming indifferent to what happens. This mistake creates either endless resistance or complete passivity. Neither path belongs to a disciplined life. Acceptance begins by recognizing reality exactly as it stands. Action begins immediately afterward. You do not waste strength denying what has already occurred. You direct that strength toward the part of the situation that still belongs to your own judgment and conduct. Look honestly at how often your mind says, "This should not have happened." Hidden within that sentence is an attempt to negotiate with something that no longer belongs to choice. The event has already entered the world. It now exists beyond preference, complaint, or regret. Yet you continue holding it before your thoughts as though enough resistance might persuade reality to reverse itself. While your attention remains fixed upon what cannot be changed, the present opportunity for wise action quietly passes unnoticed. The disciplined person does not measure life by asking whether circumstances are pleasant. The deeper question is whether every circumstance can become material for virtue. A difficult conversation becomes an opportunity for patience. Uncertainty becomes an opportunity for courage. Delay becomes an opportunity for self-command. Loss becomes an opportunity to discover what cannot be taken from character. Nothing guarantees comfort, yet every situation offers a chance to strengthen the soul if reason remains in command. Each morning, before entering the demands of the day, remind yourself that the world owes you no particular arrangement of events. Plans may succeed or fail, people may remain loyal or change unexpectedly, health may continue or weaken, opportunities may appear or disappear without warning. None of these possibilities prevent you from exercising wisdom, justice, moderation, or courage. By preparing your judgment instead of your expectations, you reduce the shock that comes when life follows its own course rather than yours. One of the greatest sources of unnecessary suffering is attachment to imagined certainty. The mind creates detailed pictures of how the future should unfold. It begins living inside these expectations long before reality has spoken. When events eventually differ, disappointment feels like betrayal. Yet life never promised to fulfill every private design. Much of your frustration comes not from what actually happened, but from grieving a future that existed only within your own imagination. Whenever something unexpected interrupts your plans, pause before assigning meaning to the event. The undisciplined mind immediately declares that every obstacle is a disaster, every delay a failure, every setback an injustice. Reason asks a different question. What has truly been lost, and what still remains within my authority? Often you will discover that while circumstances have changed, your responsibility has not. You still possess the ability to think clearly, speak honestly, act fairly, and endure with dignity. These capacities remain available even when fortune withdraws many other advantages. There is strength in refusing to waste emotional energy on arguments with necessity. Rain falls without consulting your schedule. Time continues without pausing for your preferences. Other people make choices according to their own judgment rather than yours. The body ages regardless of personal wishes. These realities are not punishments directed specifically toward you. They belong to the shared condition of being human. Accepting them does not diminish your strength. It preserves your energy for responsibilities where your effort can genuinely make a difference. Acceptance should never become an excuse for inactivity. Once reality has been acknowledged, action becomes your obligation. If work remains unfinished, continue working. If a relationship requires honesty, speak honestly. If a mistake has been made, correct it. If suffering can be reduced through thoughtful effort, act without delay. The disciplined person neither complains endlessly nor waits helplessly. They move steadily toward whatever duty the present moment places before them. Observe how easily resentment disguises itself as justice. You begin believing that because life has treated you unfairly, your bitterness has become reasonable, yet resentment changes nothing outside you while quietly damaging everything within you. It clouds judgment, weakens patience, and narrows attention until every new event is interpreted through the memory of old disappointments. The burden grows heavier because it is carried voluntarily long after the original event has passed. Practice asking a different question whenever hardship arrives. Instead of asking, "Why did this happen to me?" ask, "What kind of person does this situation invite me to become?" This shift transforms adversity from an enemy into a teacher. The event itself may remain difficult, but your relationship to it changes completely. Your attention leaves complaint behind and returns to character, where genuine freedom can still be exercised. Many people postpone courageous action because they are waiting for certainty. They tell themselves they will act once fear disappears, once every outcome becomes predictable, or once perfect conditions arrive. Such conditions rarely exist. The disciplined person understands that uncertainty accompanies nearly every meaningful decision. They do not require guarantees before fulfilling their responsibilities. They require only enough clarity to recognize what reason presently demands. There will be seasons of life when progress appears painfully slow. Effort produces little visible reward. Patience seems unnoticed. Discipline feels ordinary rather than extraordinary. During these periods, the temptation to abandon your principles becomes strong. Resist it. The value of virtue has never depended upon immediate results. Continue acting well, because right action remains worthy even when success arrives later than expected or not at all. Another valuable practice is learning to distinguish inconvenience from catastrophe. The mind often exaggerates minor disruptions until they appear overwhelming. A delayed plan becomes evidence that everything is failing. A small mistake becomes proof of permanent inadequacy. By enlarging ordinary difficulties, you create burdens far heavier than reality itself has placed upon you. Examine every challenge carefully before accepting the story your first impression attempts to tell. When another person's choices create hardship for you, remember that their conduct belongs to their own judgment. You may respond wisely, establish necessary boundaries, or refuse cooperation with wrongdoing, but you cannot rewrite another person's character through frustration. Attempting to govern what lies outside your authority only multiplies disappointment. Govern your own response with greater care than you analyze another person's failures. Throughout the day, return repeatedly to the simple distinction that protects inner stability. Ask yourself what belongs to your responsibility and what belongs elsewhere. Your effort belongs to you. Your integrity belongs to you. Your attention belongs to you. The final outcome often does not. Once you have acted according to reason, allow events to unfold without demanding that reality reward your virtue on your preferred timetable. There is profound freedom in releasing the belief that every painful experience must immediately reveal its purpose. Sometimes understanding arrives slowly. Sometimes it remains incomplete for many years. Do not make wisdom dependent upon immediate explanation. Continue living honorably even while certain questions remain unanswered. The disciplined soul can endure uncertainty without inventing comforting illusions or collapsing into despair. Set aside a few moments each day to reflect upon previous hardships that once seemed impossible to bear. Notice how many of them eventually became sources of greater maturity, patience, or clarity. This exercise is not performed to guarantee that every future difficulty will produce visible rewards. It reminds you that your first judgment has often been incomplete. Events that once appeared entirely destructive frequently revealed opportunities hidden from immediate perception. Do not become attached even to favorable circumstances. Prosperity changes, recognition fades, physical strength fluctuates, relationships evolve. Every condition granted by fortune remains temporary. Appreciate what is present without pretending it will remain forever. Gratitude becomes deeper when it is freed from the illusion of permanence. You enjoy what exists today while remaining prepared to continue living virtuously if tomorrow brings change. As evening approaches, examine the moments when reality challenged your preferences. Did you spend more energy resisting facts than fulfilling responsibilities? Did disappointment weaken your commitment to justice? Did uncertainty persuade you to neglect courage? Did frustration disturb your patience? This examination is not meant to produce guilt but awareness. Every honest review prepares your judgment to respond more wisely when tomorrow presents new circumstances. You will gradually notice that accepting fate changes the quality of your effort rather than reducing it. You work diligently without becoming enslaved to results. You care deeply without demanding control over every outcome. You pursue excellence without believing success alone determines your worth. Your actions become calmer because they arise from principle instead of desperation. Energy previously wasted on resistance becomes available for meaningful action. This discipline also transforms your relationships with others. You stop expecting people to satisfy every hope you have placed upon them. You recognize that every human being struggles with limitations, ignorance, fear, and changing circumstances. This recognition does not excuse harmful behavior, but it softens unnecessary outrage. You become slower to condemn and quicker to exercise patience because you no longer expect perfection from imperfect people. There will always be events that remain beyond explanation and beyond correction. Some losses cannot be reversed. Some opportunities never return. Some chapters end without the conclusion you wanted. Do not allow these realities to persuade you that your own life has lost direction. The path of virtue remains open in every season. Even after disappointment, wisdom can still guide your decisions. Even after failure, integrity can still shape your conduct. Even after grief, justice and compassion remain available to your character. Carry this understanding into every tomorrow. Welcome each new day without demanding that it obey your preferences. Meet favorable moments with gratitude and difficult moments with steadiness. Refuse to confuse acceptance with inactivity or adversity with defeat. Let every unexpected event become another opportunity to strengthen the one thing that truly belongs to you. Your capacity to choose wisely, act honorably, endure patiently, and return again and again to reason. When you stop struggling against reality itself and begin directing your full attention toward the quality of your own response, fate no longer appears as an enemy standing in your way. It becomes the very ground upon which your character is tested, refined, and quietly made unshakable. Number 8. Speak less. Observe more, endure. There is a reason your mind feels exhausted even when your body has done very little. You have been spending your strength where it was never meant to be spent. Every unnecessary argument, every impulsive reply, every attempt to correct every misunderstanding, every restless urge to explain yourself, has slowly scattered your attention. You believe you are defending your dignity, yet you are often surrendering it. The person who must respond to everything has already allowed the world to determine the rhythm of their inner life. The disciplined soul moves differently. It does not rush to speak because silence has already taught it something that endless conversation never could. Most suffering enters the mind long before it enters reality. A single careless remark is spoken, and immediately your thoughts begin constructing responses that may never be needed. Someone disagrees with you, and within moments you are rehearsing arguments, imagining future confrontations, and seeking victory inside conversations that exist only within your imagination. The event itself was small. Your unexamined reaction made it enormous. Every unnecessary word that follows an unchecked impression gives greater strength to what should have remained weak. You often believe speaking proves confidence. In truth, constant speech frequently hides insecurity. The mind that trusts its own judgment rarely feels compelled to announce itself at every opportunity. It understands that truth does not become stronger because it is repeated more loudly. Character is revealed through consistent conduct far more than persuasive language. A person may speak beautifully while living carelessly. Another may speak very little while quietly practicing justice, courage, moderation, and wisdom each day. Only one of these lives possesses genuine stability. Before you open your mouth, ask yourself whether your words arise from reason or from disturbance. Are you speaking because the moment genuinely requires clarity, or because pride cannot tolerate remaining silent? Are you trying to contribute something useful, or merely protecting an image you have created of yourself? Many conversations continue long after wisdom has departed, simply because neither person is willing to surrender the final word. Victory achieved through endless argument often costs more than quiet restraint. Begin each morning with a deliberate commitment. Tell yourself that today you will not measure your influence by how often you speak, but by the quality of your judgment. Resolve that every sentence leaving your mouth will first pass through examination. Ask whether it is truthful, necessary, measured, and beneficial. If it fails these standards, allow silence to accomplish what speech never could. This simple discipline immediately returns authority to your own reason before the world begins demanding reactions. There is extraordinary strength in becoming an observer before becoming a participant. Most people enter every situation already prepared with opinions. They hear only enough to confirm what they intended to believe from the beginning. Observation requires greater discipline because it demands patience. It asks you to notice facts before conclusions, actions before assumptions, and patterns before judgments. The person who observes carefully understands reality more clearly than the person who reacts quickly. Throughout the day, practice watching your own mind with the same attention you give to the behavior of others. Notice how rapidly impressions become conclusions. Watch how praise tempts satisfaction, criticism invites defensiveness, and inconvenience awakens irritation. These movements often occur before conscious thought has begun. By observing them without immediately obeying them, you create the distance necessary for reason to recover its rightful place. You cannot govern what you refuse to notice. Many unnecessary conflicts begin because you answer questions that were never asked. You defend motives no one accused. You explain decisions that require no explanation. You volunteer opinions where quiet attention would have produced greater understanding. This habit does not strengthen communication. It often weakens it by placing emotion where calm observation should have remained. Discipline teaches restraint. Not every silence conceals weakness. Sometimes silence protects wisdom from being wasted where it cannot yet be received. Pay close attention to people before deciding how to respond to them. Listen beyond their words. Notice their fears, frustrations, habits, and assumptions. Observe where impatience controls them, where pride interrupts them, and where anxiety narrows their judgment. This observation is not performed to condemn them. It reminds you that every human being struggles with an undisciplined mind. Compassion becomes easier when you recognize that others often act from confusion rather than deliberate malice. The same careful observation must also be directed inward. Whenever strong emotion appears, resist the urge to identify completely with it. Instead of saying, "I am angry," notice that anger has appeared within your experience. Instead of declaring everything is hopeless, Observe that discouragement is attempting to influence your judgment. This small change transforms your relationship with emotion. You stop becoming its servant and begin examining it as something that requires thoughtful evaluation. Endurance begins where preference ends. Anyone can remain composed while circumstances remain pleasant. The true measure of character appears when discomfort arrives without invitation. Long waiting, repeated setbacks, physical fatigue, misunderstanding, and disappointment all present opportunities to discover whether your commitment to virtue depends upon convenience. If your principles disappear whenever life becomes difficult, then they were never principles. They were merely preferences supported by favorable conditions. Do not confuse endurance with silent resentment. Some people refuse to complain outwardly while continuing to nourish bitterness inwardly. Their mouths remain quiet, but their thoughts remain full of accusation. Genuine endurance does not simply restrain speech, it transforms judgment. It refuses to describe every hardship as an injustice. It accepts that difficulty belongs to human existence and chooses to meet it with steadiness rather than internal rebellion. There will be moments when you desperately want immediate answers. You will wish uncertain situations would resolve quickly. You will hope difficult people would change according to your expectations. Yet many problems cannot be solved through force. They must be endured with patience while continuing to fulfill present responsibilities. Endurance is not waiting helplessly. It is remaining faithful to reason while time completes what impatience cannot accomplish. Practice remaining calm during ordinary inconveniences. When plans change unexpectedly, observe your first reaction without immediately expressing it. When someone interrupts you, notice the impulse to display irritation before deciding whether it deserves expression. When delays occur, watch how quickly the mind begins inventing complaints. These daily moments are not insignificant. They are the training ground where greater resilience is quietly developed. Guard yourself against the temptation to speak simply because silence feels uncomfortable. Many words are spoken not from necessity but from fear. Fear of being forgotten, fear of appearing uncertain, fear of allowing another opinion to remain unanswered. Yet silence often demonstrates greater confidence than hurried explanation. A mind at peace does not constantly seek confirmation through conversation. Another valuable exercise is choosing one conversation each day in which your primary purpose is understanding rather than persuading. Listen completely before preparing your reply. Allow another person to finish their thought without interruption. Resist the urge to reshape every discussion into proof of your own intelligence. This practice weakens pride while strengthening wisdom, because it reminds you that learning begins where self-importance ends. When another person's emotions become intense, do not allow their agitation to dictate the atmosphere of your own mind. Observe without imitation. Anger spreading from one person to another resembles fire moving through dry grass. It continues only when new fuel is provided. Refuse to become that fuel. Maintain measured speech, deliberate attention, and calm judgment. Your steadiness may not immediately change the other person, but it preserves the one responsibility that always belongs to you. As the day unfolds, ask yourself repeatedly whether your energy is being invested where it can produce virtue or wasted where it can produce only noise. Every unnecessary argument drains attention from meaningful work. Every careless reaction weakens future discipline. Every thoughtful pause strengthens the habit of self-command. The quality of your life depends not only upon what you choose to do, but also upon what you wisely refuse to engage. When evening arrives, withdraw from the voices of the world and become a careful witness of your own conduct. Recall the moments when silence would have served you better than speech. Remember where observation could have replaced assumption. Notice where endurance gave way to impatience. Do not perform this examination to punish yourself. Perform it because an unexamined day quietly prepares tomorrow's mistakes, while an examined day prepares tomorrow's improvement. You will gradually discover that silence sharpens perception. Observation strengthens judgment. Endurance deepens freedom. These qualities work together until your responses no longer arise from habit but from deliberate choice. You begin noticing details that previously escaped your attention. You become slower to condemn, slower to react, and slower to exaggerate temporary discomfort. This slower pace is not weakness. It is the rhythm of a mind that refuses to surrender itself to impulse. There will always be opportunities to speak impulsively, judge hastily, and complain loudly. The world constantly invites such behavior because it requires little discipline. Resist that invitation. Let your words become fewer but more truthful. Let your attention become quieter but more penetrating. Let your endurance become stronger than your preference for comfort. In doing so, you will discover that much of the conflict you once believed existed outside you was actually created by the haste within you. Carry this practice into every new morning. Before speaking, allow reason to examine your words. Before judging, allow observation to replace assumption. Before resisting hardship, ask whether endurance would strengthen your character more than complaint. Protect your inner life from unnecessary noise, because every careless word, every rushed conclusion, and every impatient reaction weakens the discipline you are trying to build. The person who learns to speak with intention, observe with clarity, and endure with quiet strength possesses a freedom that cannot be shaken by passing emotions or changing circumstances. Such a person no longer wastes life trying to control every conversation or every event. They devote themselves to the only task worthy of complete attention, governing their own mind with unwavering reason. Number 9. Choose virtue over temporary comfort. Every day presents you with a quiet decision that most people never recognize. It is rarely announced by dramatic events. It appears in ordinary moments when no one else is watching. You are offered a choice between what is easy and what is right, between what feels pleasant now and what strengthens your character for years to come. Most lives are shaped not by extraordinary decisions, but by these unnoticed moments. Each time comfort is chosen over virtue, the mind becomes slightly weaker. Each time virtue is chosen over comfort, the soul becomes more trustworthy. This is how character is built, not through sudden transformation, but through repeated obedience to reason when comfort offers a more attractive path. The greatest deception of temporary comfort is that it disguises itself as harmless. It whispers that delaying responsibility by one day cannot matter. It insists that avoiding one difficult conversation will preserve peace. It promises that one dishonest word will prevent unnecessary conflict. It encourages you to remain where you are because growth appears uncomfortable. Yet every compromise leaves a quiet mark upon the mind. You begin trusting convenience more than judgment. Gradually, what once felt like a conscious choice becomes an automatic habit, and habit begins directing your life more powerfully than reason. Look carefully at your own daily experience. How often have you known exactly what should be done, yet chosen something easier instead? You knew discipline required rising from your bed, but comfort persuaded you to remain. You knew honesty required admitting a mistake, but pride invited silence. You knew patience would strengthen a relationship, yet irritation demanded immediate satisfaction. In each situation, your understanding was already present. The struggle was never about knowledge. It was about whether reason or comfort would become your ruler. The disciplined life begins by recognizing that comfort is not an enemy, but neither is it a trustworthy guide. Pleasant circumstances may be welcomed when they arrive, but they must never determine your conduct. If your actions depend upon feeling motivated, rested, appreciated, or emotionally satisfied, then your character remains vulnerable to every changing condition. A stable life cannot be built upon unstable feelings. It must be built upon principles that remain firm, whether circumstances are favorable or difficult. Begin every morning by reminding yourself that discomfort is not evidence that you are walking the wrong path. Often it is evidence that you are finally resisting old habits. The effort required to govern your thoughts, fulfill your duties, and remain faithful to reason will sometimes feel demanding. Do not mistake difficulty for failure. Muscles strengthen through resistance, and the same is true of character. The mind grows resilient only when it repeatedly chooses what is right, despite the attraction of what is easy. Before the day gathers speed, quietly examine the responsibilities waiting before you. Do not ask which task feels most pleasant. Ask which duty deserves your attention first. Perform that duty without bargaining for a more comfortable alternative. By acting before excuses have time to multiply, you train yourself to follow reason instead of inclination. Every morning completed in this manner weakens the authority of laziness and strengthens self-command. One of the most dangerous comforts is the comfort of avoiding truth. Many people protect themselves from temporary embarrassment by refusing honest self-examination. They excuse recurring weaknesses. They blame circumstances for repeated failures. They explain away habits that clearly damage their peace. This avoidance provides brief relief, but prevents lasting improvement. Nothing grows stronger by remaining hidden. Whatever you refuse to examine continues governing your life without your awareness. Practice meeting yourself with complete honesty at least once each day. Ask where fear influenced your decisions. Notice where impatience replaced wisdom. Identify moments when convenience persuaded you to neglect responsibility. This examination is not performed to create shame. It is performed because truth always serves improvement better than comforting illusion. The mind that willingly acknowledges its own faults possesses greater freedom than the mind endlessly protecting an image of perfection. Comfort also appears in the desire to avoid difficult emotions. You may distract yourself rather than facing grief. You may seek constant entertainment rather than sitting quietly with your own thoughts. You may remain endlessly occupied because silence forces you to encounter questions you have postponed for years. Yet whatever is avoided continues waiting patiently. Peace does not come from escaping your inner life. It comes from entering it with courage and allowing reason to illuminate what habit has concealed. There will be moments when virtue requires immediate sacrifice. Speaking honestly may cost approval. Acting justly may cost opportunity. Remaining faithful to principle may cost temporary success. In such moments, remember that every external advantage remains uncertain, while the quality of your character remains entirely within your care. Nothing gained by abandoning virtue can compensate for the loss of inner integrity. The soul always pays a greater price than comfort first appears to demand. Train yourself to become familiar with voluntary discomfort. Occasionally choose the harder path when an easier one exists. Walk instead of seeking unnecessary convenience. Complete your obligations before pursuing amusement. Sit quietly without reaching immediately for distraction. Finish difficult work before rewarding yourself with leisure. These small disciplines teach the mind that contentment does not depend upon constant comfort. They prepare you for greater challenges by strengthening your willingness to endure temporary hardship without complaint. Observe how often impatience arises because comfort has become an expectation rather than a preference. The smallest inconvenience begins feeling intolerable. A brief delay creates frustration. Minor criticism disturbs your peace. Ordinary effort feels excessive. These reactions reveal not the severity of your circumstances, but the softness of your expectations. A disciplined person expects life to include effort, uncertainty, disappointment, and delay, Because these realities are anticipated, they no longer possess the power to create unnecessary distress. Do not seek recognition for choosing virtue. The moment your discipline depends upon admiration, comfort has simply changed its form. You have exchanged physical ease for emotional approval. Perform worthy actions because they are worthy. Let your conscience become your witness. Quiet integrity possesses greater strength than public praise because it remains available whether anyone notices your efforts or not. Throughout the day, pause whenever you feel a strong desire to escape discomfort. Ask yourself what you are actually avoiding. Is it honest work? Is it accountability? Is it uncertainty? Is it the effort required to remain patient? Naming the discomfort clearly prevents it from becoming larger than reality. Once it has been examined, you often discover that the burden was carried more heavily in imagination than in action. There will be times when choosing virtue brings no immediate reward. Your patience may be misunderstood. Your honesty may remain unnoticed. Your restraint may receive no recognition. Continue anyway. Virtue was never intended as a transaction through which you purchase favorable outcomes. It is the proper use of your own character. Its value does not depend upon applause, success, or visible results. It remains worthwhile because it keeps your inner life aligned with reason. As evening approaches, withdraw from the noise of the day and conduct a careful examination of your choices. Ask where comfort quietly influenced your judgment. Recall the moments when you honored your responsibilities despite resistance. Notice where you surrendered too quickly to convenience. Do not hide from these answers. They reveal the exact places where tomorrow's discipline must begin. Every honest review transforms experience into instruction. Gradually, you will discover that your relationship with discomfort begins to change. Challenges no longer appear as interruptions to life, but as opportunities to practice self-command. Difficult duties become occasions for strengthening discipline. Unpleasant emotions become invitations to examine your judgments rather than obey them. The very experiences you once avoided become the exercises through which your character matures. You will also notice that temporary comfort often leaves the mind restless, while virtue leaves it peaceful. The pleasure of avoiding responsibility fades quickly, but the memory of neglected duty remains. The relief of compromising your principles disappears, but self-respect becomes more difficult to recover. In contrast, the effort required to act rightly may feel demanding for a short time, yet it produces a quiet confidence that continues long after discomfort has passed. This confidence cannot be purchased, borrowed, or given by another person. It is earned through repeated fidelity to reason. The world will continually encourage you to seek the easiest path. It will celebrate convenience, immediate gratification, and effortless success. Resist these invitations whenever they ask you to abandon what is right. Remember that the quality of your life is determined not by how comfortably you live, but by how faithfully you govern yourself. Every decision either strengthens your ability to live according to wisdom or weakens it. There is no neutral choice. Carry this understanding into tomorrow. When comfort and virtue stand before you, do not ask which path promises the quickest relief. Ask which path leaves your character stronger when the day has ended. Let wisdom direct your judgment, justice guide your actions, courage sustain you through difficulty, and moderation restrain every impulse that seeks ease without merit. When virtue becomes more valuable to you than temporary comfort, no hardship can corrupt your principles, no pleasure can distract your purpose, and no circumstance can separate you from the quiet freedom that belongs to a disciplined soul. Number 10. Become impossible to manipulate internally. There is a point in every person's life where suffering stops coming from events themselves and starts coming from something deeper and far more subtle. It comes from within, not from what happens, but from how easily what happens is allowed to reshape your mind. A single comment changes your mood. A minor failure changes your identity. A stranger's opinion shifts your confidence. A sudden inconvenience disrupts your peace. At this stage, you are not governed by life. You are governed by reactions that arise faster than your own reasoning. To become impossible to manipulate internally is to break this chain. It is to reclaim the moment between impression and response, where freedom actually lives. Most people do not realize how often their inner life is being moved by forces they never consciously agreed to obey. Someone praises you and your mind rises. Someone criticizes you and your mind collapses. Something unexpected happens and your thoughts scatter. Something familiar returns and your emotions settle. You begin to believe you are stable, yet your stability depends entirely on external triggers. This is not strength, it is dependency disguised as personality. A mind in this condition does not belong to itself. It belongs to whatever happens next. The first step toward inner independence is recognizing that no external event directly harms your reasoning power. What harms you is your unexamined interpretation of the event. Between what happens and how you respond, there is a space. In that space, your character is revealed. If you react immediately, that space disappears. If you pause, that space becomes your greatest protection. In that space, no one can manipulate you unless you abandon it voluntarily. Every day, impressions will attempt to enter your mind and define your response before you have examined them. A harsh word appears, and anger immediately tries to present itself as justified. An opportunity is offered, and greed begins to call it necessary. A loss occurs, and despair attempts to declare it final. A comparison arises, and envy tries to convince you that you are lacking. None of these impressions carry authority unless you grant it. The untrained mind grants it instantly. The disciplined mind refuses immediate agreement and asks whether the impression deserves acceptance. Begin your day with a simple but unbreakable commitment. Decide that nothing entering your mind today will be accepted without examination. Not praise, not insult, not fear, not desire, not assumption. Everything must pass through the judgment of reason before it becomes your belief or reaction. This single practice weakens every attempt at internal manipulation because it interrupts automatic obedience to impulse. You are manipulated internally every time you confuse appearance with truth. Something appears threatening, so fear responds as if danger is certain. Something appears desirable, so desire responds as if possession is necessary. Something appears unjust, so anger responds as if retaliation is required. Yet appearance is not reality. It is only the first impression of reality. If you never question appearance, you will live inside constant distortion. If you examine it, clarity begins to emerge. Observe how quickly your mood changes throughout a normal day. Notice how little external reality is actually changing compared to how often your internal state shifts. This reveals something important. You are not being controlled by events. You are being controlled by interpretations formed without reflection. Most emotional instability is not caused by life itself, but by unchallenged judgments about life. Once this is understood, responsibility shifts inward. The disciplined mind asks a simple question before reacting. What exactly is happening? Stripped of interpretation. A person spoke, a plan changed, a delay occurred, an outcome did not match expectation. That is the event. Everything added afterward is your judgment. If your judgment is inaccurate or exaggerated, your response will be equally unstable. Accuracy of perception is the foundation of inner freedom. Practice separating what belongs to you from what does not in every situation. What belongs to you is your judgment, your choice, your intention, and your response. Everything else belongs to circumstances beyond your command. No one can manipulate your will unless you confuse external events with internal authority. The moment you assign your peace to something outside yourself, you surrender control without realizing it. Much internal manipulation comes from the desire for approval. When approval becomes necessary for stability, you become vulnerable to every opinion around you. A single word of praise elevates you. A single word of criticism disturbs you. You begin adjusting your behavior not according to reason, but according to anticipated reactions from others. In this condition, your life is no longer guided by your own judgment. It is shaped by imagined judgment from people who are not even present. To break this dependence, you must stop treating approval as a measure of worth. Approval is only information about another person's perspective, not a verdict on your character. When you understand this clearly, praise stops inflating you and criticism stops destabilizing you. You remain steady because you are no longer outsourcing your identity to external interpretation. Another form of internal manipulation arises through memory. Past events continue influencing present reactions long after they have ended. A previous failure makes you hesitant even when circumstances are different. A past betrayal makes you suspicious even when trust is appropriate. A previous success makes you overconfident even when caution is required. Memory becomes manipulation when it dictates present judgment without being examined. The disciplined mind does not reject memory, but it does not obey it blindly. It asks whether past experience is relevant to present reality. It refuses to allow yesterday's emotional residue to define today's reasoning. Each moment deserves its own judgment, unclouded by automatic repetition of old reactions. You must also become aware of how imagination manipulates you internally. You suffer in anticipation of events that have not occurred. You rehearse conversations that may never happen. You construct scenarios of failure that exist only in thought. The body reacts as if these imagined events are real, producing anxiety without actual cause. This is internal manipulation at its most subtle form, where non-existent events govern real emotions. Interrupt this process by returning attention to what is actually present. Ask yourself what is truly occurring right now, not what might occur later or what has already been imagined. Reality is always simpler than fear suggests. Reason always operates in the present, while anxiety lives in projections. Another essential discipline is refusing to label yourself based on temporary states. You are not your frustration, you are not your fear, you are not your anger. These are conditions passing through awareness, not definitions of identity. When you believe emotions define you, you become easily manipulated by them. When you recognize them as passing impressions, you regain authority over response. Each evening, review moments when you were internally moved without awareness. Identify where you reacted before thinking. Notice where emotion preceded judgment. Observe where you accepted impressions without examination. Do not use this review to condemn yourself, but to sharpen recognition. Awareness is the beginning of resistance. What is seen clearly can no longer govern you unconsciously. As this practice deepens, you begin noticing a fundamental change. External events continue to occur, but their power to control your inner state weakens. Praise becomes pleasant but not necessary. Criticism becomes informative but not destabilizing. Loss becomes painful but not destructive. Success becomes satisfying but not defining. You are no longer moved blindly by conditions. You are guided by judgment that remains steady regardless of circumstance. This is what it means to become internally unmanipulable. It does not mean absence of emotion. It means absence of unexamined reaction. Emotion still appears, but it no longer governs decision. Impression still arises, but it no longer becomes automatic belief. Life still changes, but your reasoning remains constant. Stability is no longer dependent on controlling the world. It is dependent on governing your interpretation of it. There will always be attempts to pull your mind outward into reaction, comparison, fear, and desire. That will not stop. What can stop is your willingness to obey immediately. Every time you pause before reacting, you reclaim a portion of yourself that was previously surrendered. Every time you examine judgment before accepting it, you weaken the power of external influence. Every time you choose response over reaction, you reinforce the only freedom that cannot be taken from you. Carry this discipline into every interaction. Before speaking, examine intention. Before agreeing, examine truth. Before reacting, examine judgment. Before worrying, examine reality. Let no impression pass unchallenged into belief. Let no emotion pass unexamined into action. Let no external event become authority over your inner life. When this becomes your way of living, manipulation loses its foundation. Nothing outside you can control what you refuse to surrender. The world continues to move, but your mind no longer moves blindly with it. You remain aware, deliberate, and unshaken. Not because life has become easier, but because your judgment has become stronger than your reactions.